Stand up. Stand up. I'm trying to say it louder each time I go live. I'm trying to show a little bit more energy. The last few times I've gone live for this team, we still can't get the full stand up for the New York Giants. But we're starting to get a little bit more into it. We won 2 in a row, albeit probably meaningless games. Tommy DeVito, he's a fun story. He's kind of the Jeremy Lin of the New York Giants. Obviously, a guy that I don't expect to be the long-term solution for this team, but something to tune into on Sundays, at least, to make it somewhat fun. But the Giants get their second win in a row with Tommy DeVito at the quarterback. And today, and that's what the bulk of this stream is going to be about. I haven't gotten to watch because I was working all day. I haven't gotten a chance to watch the full press conference in its entirety. I saw excerpts, little tidbits on Twitter. Specifically, obviously, everybody was hammering home what Joe Schoen had to say about the quarterback position with Daniel Jones and everything else. I'll get to see it in its full context. We'll talk about it throughout the live stream. We'll play it in its entirety. It's about 30 minutes in length. So I figured I'd do it live. I was going to do a video, and then a lot of people on Twitter said, no, I'll do it live. It'll be fun to talk with you live about the chat, your thoughts on the press conference and everything else. The first thing I'm going to say before I even play the press conference and look into this is I'm not going to read too much into a mid-season press conference from Joe Schoen. Well, especially when he's talking about his offseason plans, especially pertaining to the draft. We're 4 or 5 months away from the draft. He's not going to tip his hand, if he has plans to potentially trade up or whatever it may be. So no matter what he says in this press conference, I'm not going to take it as gospel. That's not what a smart general manager would do. So that's the first thing I'm going to say before we even play it today and give our thoughts. But going to say hello to everybody in the chat. What's going on, McCam? What's going on there, Victor? What's going on there, Daniel Barry? Bill Hartnett in the chat. Slink says, I'll stand up when the Giants have a winning record. Slink just said, I'm going to stand up when the Giants have a winning record. Slink, you better have the most comfortable chair in North America or wherever you're from, because you're going to be sitting for a long time. I hope you got one of those gaming chairs with the leather seats, and you're going to be sitting there for a while. So hopefully you got a comfortable chair, because you're not going to be standing for quite some time. What's up, Sonny Man? Thanks for popping in. What's going on, Laid Back? What's going on, King Trizzy? Phil in the chat. What's going on? What's going on, John McGurk? What's going on, Bill? What's going on, Tyler Smith? So I'm sure a lot of you guys tuning in. Yeah. Oh, have to mention this, by the way. Found out yesterday on Twitter. I think Rob actually tried to call me, R0, who does the show with Pest. I was going to sleep. I had work the next day, and I kind of forgot about it. But Rob told me about it, or meant to tell me about it. And then I found out on Twitter the next day. I had no idea. I was shocked when I saw somebody tweet about it. He's been on my channel before numerous times. I've gone to MetLife Stadium with, I've met Pest at MetLife Stadium, I think 3 different times. Once at training camp, maybe at least 2 times. Got to hang out with him after a game, went out to dinner, did other things that adult males do. And it was great getting to know him. And just sad to hear about that. If anybody does not know, if anybody has seen him on my channel before, Pest, unfortunately, passed away. I don't know what his exact age was, but obviously he wasn't very old, and from cancer. So that was horrible. I saw that news yesterday on Twitter. I retweeted about it. Really nice guy. So that really made me upset yesterday. So yeah, I just figured I would, mention that. I saw somebody mention that in the chat. So yeah, that was hard when I heard that news. I'm about to cry for the first time ever on stream. But yeah. Rest in peace to Pest, man. Rest in peace to Pest. What's up, Cornelius? What's going on, Trizzy, man? Thanks for popping in the stream. What's up, Big Moon, man? Thanks for popping in, buddy. Ethan, what's going on, man? And Victor says, until the O-line gets fixed, does it matter who the quarterback is? Well, we'll talk about it throughout the live stream. We'll see what Shane had to say. But you know my thoughts on the quarterback position pertaining to the offensive line. One hand helps the other. Both of them need to get significantly improved upon. Both of them need to get significantly better if this New York Giants team is going to get to where they need to get. You're not going to be able to compete with the Eagles and the Cowboys of the world if we don't get a much improved offensive line. So I think both need to be improved upon. My thought process on the quarterback position, if there's a quarterback that the New York Giants feel is an elite game-changing talent that they have the ability to get, they should do it. It's the most important position, especially with the, I guess, lack of confidence that Joe Schoen should have in terms of Daniel Jones. Let's leave his performance on the field aside. his ability to be able to stay on the football field and stay healthy. That's a big thing at the quarterback position, and he hasn't been able to do it. So I think if there's a game-changing talent that he feels he could get, he should do it. But I also don't want Joe Schoen to reach for a quarterback. And I know there's going to be a lot of hammering from the fan base this offseason that they need to take a quarterback no matter what. I am not of that mindset. I am of the mindset if you love a quarterback and you feel he is an elite game-changing talent, you do what you possibly can do to get that guy. But I don't want to force a quarterback pick either. That's how you end up with another Daniel Jones. So we'll see. You know, it's very hard to talk about this right now without knowing where we're going to stand in terms of the draft. Are the teams ahead of us willing to trade back? There's going to be a lot to talk about in the offseason. So that's definitely going to be the biggest topic of conversation. What do we do at the quarterback spot? I'm sure that Joe Schoen was pressed upon this throughout the press conference today. I saw tidbits. He was asked at least 2 or 3 times. I saw it on Twitter. But Bill, man, thank you very much, man. Joe knows he's effed up on the O-line. JMS was not enough to reinvent the pathetic 2022 O-line. Huge miss from the young GM. Listen, I can't kill Shane in terms of because, I mean, we don't know what JMS is going to be. He's still a rookie. He's still young. But where I think you could start to be a little bit critical of Shane in terms of the offensive line is Evan Neal. It's year 2 now. And Evan Neal was a top 7 draft pick. And he is not close to what we imagined that he would be. And hopefully next year he takes that leap. And we were all thinking he was going to take a leap this year. So I do think it's fair. You know, if you want to knock Shane for one move that he's made thus far, I think that is the one that you should really knock him for. Now, it's only 2 years in. Hopefully he gets better next year. But to me, that's been, in terms of drafting, obviously I know a lot of people want to kill the Daniel Jones contract. I'm just talking about his drafts. I think that's the one move that you could really start to question Joe Schoen's selection of that pick. And yeah, I mean, I think on draft night, we were all excited about Evan Neal because we said, okay, we got the bookend tackles. We don't got to worry about this. If Daniel Jones doesn't work out, at least the quarterback that's going to replace him is going to be able to step in. He's going to have bookend tackles, and you're going to have a young emerging offensive line. That, to me, and a lot of people obviously are going to hammer home Jones and the quarterback, and I get it. It's the most important position. But that, to me, has been the most disappointing part of this season for me. Because if Jones didn't work out, I always said to myself, if this season completely bombs, we could still draft the quarterback the next year. Evan Neal not working out, I was hoping if we had to do what I think we may have to do this offseason at the quarterback position or the offseason after that, Evan Neal would have grown, and I would have said, okay, this next quarterback's coming into a situation where you can trust your 2 tackles on the outside. You're starting to improve the interior with John Michael Smith. So, yeah, I think the Evan Neal potential miss is a huge red flag for Joe Schoen. As far as the guards go, I saw you ask about that too, Bill. There's only so much you can do in one offseason. And now I think he should have probably drafted another lineman in this year's draft, but he would have been a rookie. How much of an impact do you think he would have had? Azudu hasn't shown much development, though, even though he hasn't gotten much of an opportunity to get on the field. Well, he has. He's played some tackle this year as well. But, yeah, I mean, the guards as well. The whole line in general, outside of Andrew Thomas, which he didn't even draft, has been a mess. I mean, right now we're on pace to surrender the second most sacks in a single season in the history of the NFL. You can't put all that on the quarterback. So the offensive line has to get significantly better. And that has to be a focal point next offseason. I know I say it every year, but it's the truth. Until this line gets significantly better, we're not going to be able to maximize our players' talents, whether it be the quarterback, the wide receiver, the running back, everything else. So that's where it starts for me. That's where consistency starts. There's no doubt about it. That's the foundation. Charlie says, what are your opinions on all our pass catchers? I mean, Jalen Hyatt to me, Charlie, was like, Jalen Hyatt yesterday to me was the most encouraging part of yesterday's game. I mean, there were definitely some other really good performances. Deonte Banks continues to flourish this year. He's had a couple of, ups and downs. But when you factor in the wide receivers that Deonte Banks has gone up against this year, you got to be incredibly encouraged as a New York Giant fan, having a rookie corner in a scheme that depends on the corners as much as Wink Martindale's scheme does for Deonte Banks to play on the level that he has this year. Look at some of the list of wide receivers he's gone up against. He's had a great year. He played great again yesterday. But to me, the guy that stood out the most yesterday from an individual standpoint was Jalen Hyatt. Jalen Hyatt was fantastic. And it wasn't just fly patterns for once that they were hitting him on. They hit him with the slant pattern late in the and then they had the crosser too. So they started to use him in different ways. I'd like to see them expand upon that over the last 5 games. Get him involved in the screen, some bubble screens, right? A guy with his athleticism, his speed, he's a guy that could break a big play anywhere on the field, and he is certainly growing a lot as a player. Wandale, of course, had the fumble. I don't think Wan'Dale's ever going to be a 2. I think he could be a good 3. We're probably still missing that 1. Maybe Hyatt becomes that 1. He definitely is showing a capability of being a very good 2. That's what I thought when we drafted him. I thought he was the clear long-term replacement for Darius Slayton. I thought Slayton was kind of a placeholder for what Jalen Hyatt was going to be in a year or two. That's where I think we're headed. So I think Hyatt is a clear, solid potential 2. I still think we probably need that number 1 option at the wide receiving core, but at least we have some young pieces, right? Hyatt is definitely shown a lot, though, these last couple of weeks, and he definitely is a very explosive wide receiver. So I'm excited about him and the rest of the wide receivers in this core. Let's see. But again, I still think we need that number 1. Independent, what's going on? Oh, Playboy Phil, didn't mean to miss you, man. He says, do you see Joe giving us a king's ransom to trade up for Caleb Williams or Drake May like the 49ers did for the Bills did trade up to get Josh Allen. Here's what I'll say, Phil. Because I know a lot of people are just going to say, just trade up. Just go get your quarterback. Just trade up. Go get your guy. It's easy. Just trade up. Just give up first-round picks. You go up and get Drake May. You go up and get Caleb Williams. The fact of the matter is, the teams that are picking, we don't know who's going to be picking where. But if a team is picking number 1, and we all know how good Caleb Williams is, he's been talked about for 2 years. The guy's got tremendous ability. If they think he could be the next Pat Mahomes or the next top 5 quarterback in the NFL, you're not going to be able to trade up to that spot. Chicago Bears are going to stay there, and they're going to take the guy. That's just my opinion on the matter. Now, if Joe Schoen loves Caleb Williams or he loves, name another quarterback, Drake May, whoever you want to name, if he feels he has elite potential and he has the ability to trade up, yeah, I think he'll explore that possibility for sure. Because now we're kind of in a position where you could do that, but you can't guarantee that the trade's going to be there. You don't know, so we'll see. We'll see. But I think if they feel one of those guys is a slam dunk superstar quarterback or potential superstar quarterback, and there's a deal that's there, they'll do it. In the bed says, with the Giants, who is the biggest turnaround in terms of the O-line draft picks? Is it reasonable to think Neal can bounce back? Do we need, well, I think we definitely need a new O-line coach. I don't like that we're constantly switching out the offensive line coach. I've kind of been saying that since like week 3 when everybody was calling for Bobby Johnson's job, and I understand it. And at this point, the offensive line's so bad, I know people are going to have to lose their jobs based off this season. I think he's going to be fired, and I can't argue against it. The offensive line has been pathetic. But they got to find a guy that could be here for 4 or 5 years that this team could grow with. You can't keep switching these offensive line coaches. That, to me, is of all the positional coaches, that's the one that needs the most continuity, right? So they got to find a guy, and they got to stick with it, man. That's my thoughts on that. But do I think we're going to get a new O-line coach? Yeah, I think Bobby Johnson's going to be the first one fired at the end of the year. I'd be stunned if he wasn't. I think he's going to be the first one fired in terms of this coaching staff. Can Neal bounce back? Well, we're going to hear what Shane had to say. I saw a tidbit today on Twitter about it when we pull up the press conference in about 5 minutes. We're going to see what Shane had to say. You better hope he can. You better hope he can. That's my answer to you, Independent. I don't know if he can. You better hope he can. We were all excited when we drafted Evan Neal. We saw the potential in him. People were talking as if the guy was going to be a top, 5-6 tackle in the NFL. Well, he's nowhere near that right now. He looks like a backup. So you better hope he could bounce back, because if he doesn't, it's going to take a while to fix this line. So hopefully he can. And Shane supposedly said today in the press conference that he is not entertaining the idea of moving Evan Neal to guard. So you better hope he can. Chris, what's going on? My fear ownership not going to let him draft the quarterback to replace Jones. I know people have said that, and I have not always been the biggest pro Mara guy. Matter of fact, go back. I made a video on how Mara ruined the Giants. I've not always been the biggest pro Mara guy at all. I do, in my heart of hearts, believe that Mara, if the Giants are in the spot to be able to draft a guy that they feel is a transcendent talent at the quarterback spot, will allow them to take the quarterback. I just don't know at this point if we're going to be in that position. Because right now we're picking 6. If we win another game or 2, we might be picking 7 or 8. Like, I don't know, So, but I do think if it's there, I don't think he's going to block Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll. I really don't. I don't think they would have taken this job if they felt that was the case. But if they do, look what happened with Carolina today. What a joke. This is why owners got to stay on the sideline. They got to keep their mouth shut, and they got to let the general manager do the job. You look, and I'm not insinuating that Mara's doing this, but look what happened with Tepper today. We all know reports came out almost directly after the draft that Frank Reich wanted the guy that this year might win the MVP in C.J. Stroud, and they ended up taking Bryce Young. And now now Frank Reich gets fired because of it. Same thing with the entire offensive coaching staff. Guy didn't even get a year as the head coach for the team. So that's embarrassing for the Carolina Panthers. I don't think Mara would do that. I just don't know if we're going to be in a position to take a guy that they feel is that guy. But we'll find out as the offseason approaches. Chris says, not a Giants fan, but just asking, wouldn't you rather pay for a good old lineman if one in free agency than draft another one in the top 10? Get someone. I mean, I'd love to if it made sense, Chris B., but free agency doesn't always solve the problems either. I know a lot of people, because obviously the draft has not been successful for the New York Giants in recent years, they say, oh, just throw money at a free agent. When does that work for the Giants? When does that work for the Giants when it comes to the offensive line? Last time that worked was Kareem McKenzie. Didn't work with Jeff Schwartz. Barely played with this team. Didn't work with Nate Solder. I promise you that. Kind of worked with Zeitler for like a year. So when has that really worked? I mean, yeah, I'd be for it, but I don't think that's a guaranteed, problem solver. I think even if the Giants signed a guard, I'd still want them to draft a guard in the draft. And I'm not saying first round, but I'd still want them to draft a guard in the draft. You could never have enough offensive linemen. That's my mindset on it. You need more depth at that position than any other position on the roster. Let's see. And Giants Realist says, I want quarterback Daniels or Penix. Hopefully, let me sip my coffee. I'm having too much fun talking to you guys. It's already cold. I want quarterback Daniels or Penix, hopefully. But if Joe doesn't like any quarterbacks, don't force it. I agree. That's what I've been saying. I know people don't want to hear that because people are so dead set no matter what on taking the quarterback. That's worse than sticking with Jones 100%, Giants Realist. Because you know what happens? You end up with another Daniel Jones. That's what happens. And then you're stuck with him for another 4 years as the team tries to fix it. So you can't force it. The good news is I don't think we're going to have to. I think there's 3 or 4 talented quarterbacks in this draft, but we'll talk about that when we find out what pick we have. Sad Giants fan says, Chris, really want to win the division, bro. Too long. I mean, I think we all want to win the division. It just might not happen for another 38 years, but we all want to win the division. I'm sick and tired of it. I'm watching the Eagle game yesterday. I tweeted about it. The guy makes a 59-yard field goal in the rain. The Eagles are never going to lose another football game. Everything they do works out. Everything we do doesn't. It's sickening. Bill, what's going on, man? We need to explore why we're consistently one of the most injured teams in the NFL for many years. Can't compete with the starters sitting. Yeah, I wish I had I wish I had the answer, Bill. I wish I even had the hypothesis as to why we were the most injured team. I don't think it's one reason. I think it's multiple things, but I agree with you. People have been saying it for you. We finally changed the turf. We're all excited. We're still banged up. Last year, we had a ton of injuries. This year, we've had injuries to our most important players. I actually feel we've had less injuries this year, but we've had injuries to our most important players. Dexter Lawrence missed his time yesterday. Daniel Jones, Saquon Barkley, Andrew Thomas, right? So it's just been a mess, man. It's just been a mess, and I don't know. People want to blame the medical staff. People want to blame the training staff. People want to blame the turf. I don't know, man. I think it's a combination of everything, but yeah, I agree. I'd like to stay healthier, but I think Shane talked about this too, because I think I saw a little clip on Twitter of this too, and it's what I always say. Maybe he didn't say it exactly. We'll see it in a couple of minutes when I play it. I'm just catching up with all you guys. But Shane basically hinted that you're as good as your depth. And I think the Giants, and we definitely have more injuries than most teams around the league, but I think the Giants feel the injuries more because their depth is awful, because we haven't built properly for the last 10 to 12 years. So when a guy gets hurt on our team, it hurts us a lot more than when a guy gets hurt on a well-built football team like the Baltimore Ravens, for example. So I think it's a combination of a lot of things. I think we feel the injuries more, too, because we don't have a well-built team. Phil says, what about the rumor of teams Caleb would want to play for? You think that'll alter a team's decision in picking him if he doesn't want to play for an organization? I don't. I think that's pre-draft chatter, personally. I really don't. You heard the same thing with C.J. Stroud last year. You heard the same exact thing. And I was always a big Stroud fan. Always loved Stroud. Didn't talk about him because I knew we weren't taking a quarterback. But you heard people talk about Stroud leading up into the draft with the test scores and this and that. I think it's nonsense. I think people have nothing to talk about, so they're trying to create drama for stories. I think Caleb Williams is going to be the first pick. I'd be stunned if he wasn't. Stunned. Drake May could be, I suppose. Drake May is really good too, but Caleb Williams is elite in terms of his potential. I don't think a team's going to pass up on that. I don't care about the stories that have been coming up. I don't think teams are going to pass up on Caleb Williams. Crazy things happen, but I don't think it'll be the case with him. I think he's going to go early. Layback says, what's going on with Wink Martindale? I mean, who knows, right? You heard the story yesterday, Layback, that came out from Jay Glazer right before the game started, that Wink Martindale, and that was kind of an old recycled story because you heard it from Dan Duggan like 2 weeks ago. And he later retweeted about it yesterday, where he kind of hinted at that as well. But Jay Glazer brought it to the forefront. The way that I took it, because then you saw after the game that he handed Wink the game ball, I think that was Wink kind of poking fun at the media and shove it in their face a little bit. I think there's probably something there. Yeah, I'm not surprised. Like, you would expect there to be a little bit of turmoil in the locker room when a team is 4-8, having the season that the New York Giants are having, right? So I'm not surprised that, at the end of the day, Brian Dable's job's on the line, right? His job depends on how the defense plays, the offense plays, everything else. So I'm not surprised that there's tension. Do I think that Glazer probably made it sound worse than it was? Yeah. He came out and said that he may not last the year. I don't think that's going to happen. But I wouldn't be stunned if at year's end Wink's not back with the Giants. The team's not doing well. I think I'm leaning he'll be back, but I wouldn't be stunned if he's not. I'm not saying I'm rooting for that. So I think it was kind of a half-truth, probably, if I had to guess. I think there was something there, probably. But I think Glazer probably made it sound worse than it was. Chris B says, problem with Penix is 24 with 2 ACL injuries. I know Bad Dog kind of downplays that, and that's his opinion. That's a big, the 24 doesn't bother me. 24 doesn't bother me. Joe Burrow was 24. And if we're being real, you go back 15, 20 years ago, most of these quarterbacks, when they played their first NFL game, they were 24. So the 24 doesn't bother me. If the guy's ready to play at 24, quarterbacks last till they're 40 nowadays. I know that you say 24 because it's hard to, I guess, assess him because he's an older player going up against 18, 19, 20-year-olds. I get that too. And he's got more experience at the collegiate level. But in terms of like curbing his upside, 24 doesn't bother me. The injuries bother me a little bit. I'm not going to lie about that. The guy, and I know it hasn't been recent, but the guy's missed like, 3 years, I think. He didn't finish the year due to injury. So it does worry me a little bit. Yeah, that would be my concern with Penix more so than anything else. The age doesn't bother me. Tudo, he says, salute, tutte nel commento. I don't even know what you just said. He said a lot of Italian. He said a lot of Italian. Forget about it. Tudo was watching the game yesterday. He was looking like DeVito's dad. What's going on, Tudo, man? Thanks for popping in the stream, man. Let's see. They're trying to find out exactly payback. That's what they always do. That's what the media does. They stir up drama. They create stories. So on and so forth. But good to see you, Tudo. What's going? Hey, Patty's in the chat. We're gonna hear Patty's voice. Patty, you're gonna get to hear your own voice because I'm gonna play the press conference. I'm gonna hear Patty's voice. Good to see Patty. Hope she's doing well. I'll be on with Patty in a couple of weeks. Next week, probably. What am I talking about? Next week, I'll be on with Patty. But good to see you, Patty. Hope you're doing well. Hopefully, you're enjoying the Tommy DeVito back-to-back wins. Patricia Train is awesome. A lot of people go at her on Twitter. I don't know why. She's awesome. I think one of the best people on the beat for the Giants. Whenever you listen to the beat reporters ask questions to Joe Schoen, and she's just a great person. She reached, she doesn't have to have me on her channel every week. She does. She's great. But whenever you listen to the beat reporters ask Joe Schoen questions, listen to her question and then listen to everybody else's. And you tell me what's the more educated question. You tell me which question is actually trying to conjure something that is relevant, something that is valuable as a fan. Half the guys are just looking for that clickbait answer. Patricia's actually trying to educate the fan base. But thank you to everybody for being here. I appreciate it. Let's pop up the stream. Thank you for being here, guys. By the way, I'm gonna tune the mute the mic, guys. I want you guys to know if you let me know if you guys hear the audio from the stream that I'm about to play, because I don't want it to echo from my mic. But if you don't hear it, let me know. Let me know in the chat as soon as I start to play it. Let's go. Joe Schoen.
We decided to do this on Monday as well, so you guys could enjoy the bye week as well. So obviously not where we want to be right now at 4-8. But I am proud of the guys, the way they've continued to battle and compete over the last few weeks. Again, when things are bad, they can go one of two ways, and I'm really proud of the way the guys have continued to come in and compete, and we've seen some progress over the last couple of weeks, and the results to show. So a lot of we got 5 games left, so against the NFC teams, against 4 different teams, and we're not out of it. So with that being said, I know you guys are going to have some questions in terms of upcoming free agents. I'm not going to talk about any of those guys today. That'll be postseason conversations. Whether it's Saquon, Xavier, all the guys that are UFAs. We'll leave that for after the season, those conversations. And then with Daniel, he's 5 days off his surgery. He's in there rehabbing right now. He's going to attack it. You guys all know Daniel and his work ethic. Probably a guy we're going to have to pull back, but the expectation is when Daniel's healthy that he will be our starting quarterback. Again, we don't have a crystal ball in terms of how the rehab's going to go. Different patients respond differently to these surgeries, and whether there's going to be swelling in the knee or any setbacks. Again, nobody has a crystal ball on this, but that's the expectation moving forward. So with that, I'll
All right. Well, let's just talk about that before Shane fields any questions. Let's get that out of the way. I'm gonna go to the crap mic, so I don't got to worry about this throughout the stream. Let's get that out of the way before we even get to the questions that are asked of Joe Shane. Joe Shane came right out because he knew he was going to be bombarded with questions about Daniel Jones. Is he going to be the starting quarterback? What, this, that, the other thing. Are you going to draft the quarterback? So he knew right away. Let me get this out of the way before Patty, even though Patty didn't ask, I knew she wouldn't. But before Patty and Jordan Renan and all these other guys start bombarding me with questions about the quarterback position, he's saying Daniel Jones is going to be the starting quarterback in 2024. Now, what does that mean? And we'll talk about that throughout the stream. That doesn't necessarily mean that Daniel Jones is going to be the unchallenged quarterback in 2024. But we all knew Daniel Jones was going to be back in 2024. He's under contract. You can't get rid of the guy. We know that. So take it with a grain of salt. That's my mindset. I'm not telling you he won't be the starting quarterback next year. I'm not telling you we're definitely drafting a quarterback next year. I think there's situations where we could and situations where we won't. But I'm not going to read too much into what he said in terms of is Daniel Jones going to be the unquestioned quarterback next year? No, I think that's still up for interpretation. Chris says, my guy Isaiah Simmons low-key had a good game. He made a couple of third down stops, got a few assists, and set up Bobby O for the interception. Isaiah Simmons played well yesterday. You saw him pop out on tape. Definitely. You could see that he's starting to get more and more comfortable in this defense. Bobby Okereke has been great. He was the best offseason move that the New York Giants made. He's been phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. But let's get to the rest of this.
open up to any questions you guys may have.
So you said it's obviously not where you want to be. Like when you look at it, what are the biggest factors that have led the season to kind of go in this direction?
Yeah, I would think early on, we had a difficult schedule right off the bat. 3 games in 11 days, and 2 of those teams being top of the NFC right now, or near the top of the NFC. So again, we started off very good drive against Dallas there to open the season. We get a false start, a bad snap, a blocked field goal for a touchdown, and kind of snowballed from there. So again, don't want to make any excuses. We've had some injuries, and again, we just got to continue to build the depth, and we got to continue to build the team all around. So when injuries do occur, that we can overcome those and still be competitive. When injuries happen, it's going to happen every year. It happens. It's football. It's a contact sport. There's going to be injuries, and we got to be able to overcome any type of adversity that presents itself.
So when you say Daniel will be your starter, does that mean you won't draft a quarterback next year?
No, it does. I think we're going to have to do something in the quarterback, whether it's free agency or the draft. I mean, just where we are. Tyrod's contract's up. DeVito is obviously under contract, and Daniel, we don't know when he's going to be ready. So, just from an off-season program standpoint, I think that'll be a position that we'll have to look. Again, there's different avenues, free agency or the draft. But
all right, so he's leaving open the possibility to taking a quarterback, but that's pretty obvious. Like he said, What he's saying, it could be a first-round pick, or it could just be a veteran like a Tyrod Taylor that they need to fill out their roster. Daniel Jones may not start the season due to injury. The only guy under contract right now outside of Jones is DeVito. Actually came out today. I saw that DeVito was signed, I think, a 3-year contract guarantee or whatever. He's under contract for the next 2 years. So he's going to be with the Giants next year. Whether he's the backup, whether he's the third string, that remains to be seen. But he's leaving open the possibility that they could bring in a quarterback next year. So there you go. Read into it what you will. That doesn't necessarily mean we're drafting one, but let's see what he has to say.
We'll have to address it at some point.
Joe, I have a two-parter for you, if I may. When you look back, and I know hindsight
Oh,
is
it's Patty.
2020, do you feel the roster assembly, the way you constructed the roster, benefited the team with the depth? I mean, I know you went heavy on receivers, maybe a little light on outside linebackers. It could have been because the guys that you wanted weren't there. But when you look back on that, do you have any regrets on how the roster was constructed?
Yeah, Patty, that's a great question. And again, you're only afforded so many resources to build the roster. And we've been here for, I think it's 22 months in a day. So it's, again, you have to decide how you're going to build it as you build it with the big picture in mind. And you can't do it overnight. Again, yeah, like what does it cost to go get more pass rushers, financially or draft capital, based on all the needs that you have and where you are financially or in the draft. So, no regrets. Again, we'll continue to evaluate our process and, were there other players available, other players you could have taken? Did you miss on something? We'll evaluate the entire process at the end of the season, but you can't do it all. You can't do it overnight. Instead of getting a Bobby O, and who's been a very good player for us that we brought in the off season, do you use that money elsewhere or in terms of allocation of resources? So, I like a lot of the guys that we brought in the off season. And again, we knew this wasn't going to happen overnight, and it takes time to build it the right way.
And then regarding injuries, you mentioned, that's been a problem. I know you guys looked at that in the off season. What takeaways did you have? And are there still things that you can do? And have you identified things that maybe you can do? It might be too late now, but, have you kind of said, hey, we got to change this up for next year?
We're going to continue to evaluate that. I wish it was one specific injury. It just hasn't been a consistent. If you could look and say, man, we have 7 guys that have the same injury, you could really do a deep dive on what do we need to do to improve, what we're doing in that area. But there hasn't been a consistent, other than we've been injured often. But I have a lot of confidence in our training staff and Ronnie Barnes and our strength staff with Fitz, and we're going to continue to look under every rock for any competitive advantage we can get from a sports science, training, strength and conditioning, whatever it may be, because it's hard to go in and compete week in and week out if you don't have your best players. And, I think one of the guys was telling me the other day, like going into the season, if you'd have told me, Waller, Andrew Thomas, Saquon and Daniel would play less than 40 plays together, I wouldn't have been real excited about that. And that's the reality of, how it played out.
That's wild. That's wild. Less than 40 plays together all year. Wow, that's crazy. But there you go, Patty, again, asking great questions, right? Not the typical clickbait questions. I thought that was a really good question. That's a question that somebody actually just asked in the chat. So that's what the fans want to know, right? How do they solve the injury problem? I don't think there's a quick fix to it. And I think it's, like I always say, I think it's a culmination of a lot of things, but got to improve the depth as well, right? Because injuries are a part of the sport, unfortunately. It's a sport with a lot of injuries. But I think the Giants have to do a better job. They've been near the top of the league way too often. So I think there is something to that. They need to do a better job in that aspect. So good question, though. What's going on, Cookie Monster? Man, thanks for popping in, man. What's going on, Diet Ghost? And Dennis says Joe Milton, round 3. I've watched. Dude has the biggest. That's the dude from Tennessee, isn't it? Somebody in the chat, let me know if I'm wrong. I think that's the dude from Tennessee. I actually saw him last year. I think I watched one Tennessee game this year. I watched him last year when he replaced the dude who got drafted, who was hurt. I forgot his name off the top of my head. But I watched him play last year when he got an opportunity with Tennessee. He's got a big arm. I don't know much about him, but I was impressed with his arm strength. I'll say that. But let me continue to read. Dude has the biggest. There you go. Dude has the biggest arm I've ever seen. 6'5", 250. It can move like Josh Allen. Let's go O-line or wide receiver early. Maybe Neighbors. Neighbors is going to be a top 10 pick. Really talented wide receiver. Again, I haven't watched a ton of LSU either, but everybody raves about the guy. He's pretty much the consensus number 2 wide receiver in this draft. Listen, we get a wide receiver. I'm not going to be upset about it. And if we're going to draft a quarterback, I don't know if it would be him that I'd want, Dennis. I don't know. But if we're going to take a day 2 quarterback, that's what I'd want. I'd want I want a high ceiling type player. But yeah, Hendon Hooker was the guy last year who was with Tennessee. I saw Milton last year. I actually remember watching that game, to be honest with you, and saying, I think I actually said it. I think I was on with Dad Dog that night. We did a show, and I think I said I actually think Milton's better than Hendon Hooker, just from a physical skill standpoint. But again, haven't watched a whole lot of him. Don't know, a whole lot about him. But when I saw him play, I'm like, wow, that guy's got a cannon for an arm. And like you said, he's big and everything else. But hey, maybe a name to consider as a day 2 guy. But let's continue with the stream. Thank you to everybody for being here. If I'm going quarterback, I like Penix Sanders. I don't think Sanders is coming out. I'd be stunned if Sanders comes out. The quarterback out of Colorado.
1, Evan Neal, and 2, Tommy DeVito.
Yeah, I think I'll start with Tommy. Tommy's done a good job as an undrafted free agent. He's come a long way since, he arrived here in May as an undrafted guy. And that's a testament to his work ethic and buying into the process and, Shea and Kafka and what they're teaching him. And he's taken care of the football the last couple of weeks, and he's done a good job. He's got some swagger and some presence about him that the players like and they follow him. And again, Evan, got off to a really good camp, had a concussion, missed a couple weeks, came back, and needs to play better. Evan needs to play better. He knows that. I look forward to getting back here when he's healthy. But I think he'd admit there's some things that he can do better, and we look forward to continue to improve.
When you look at a couple of things on Daniel, how do you assess how he played at the start of the season, those first 5 starts? And also, is there a worry that he has not been able to stay healthy? I mean, he's had some major injuries. Obviously, the knee is the last one, but 2 necks. He's had, lower leg things that moving forward with him, how much of an issue is that?
Yeah, and any of these guys coming off the knees, it takes some time. Like Wandell, DJ Davidson, Beavers, some of the guys that had him last year for us. It does take time, to come back to that injury, and some are able to respond quicker than others. It depends on the patient. And then, Daniel, early on, again, we got off to that rough start. We had 3 games in 11 days. There were some injuries after week 2. A short week, you're going to play San Francisco without your, starting left tackle, starting guard, and Saquon. I mean, that's a tough task for anybody. You guys have probably seen San Francisco enough this season to know that's a really good defense. So, again, I think, again, does Daniel wish you could have
against elite defenses, the 49ers? Everybody gets hurt. Everything he said there is true. And everything he says about it being a team game is true. I agree with that. It's not squarely on Daniel Jones. We all know that. He was set up for failure. We know that. I still think if you have an opportunity to improve the position and you're picking in the position where the Giants could be picking, you entertain it. And we'll see what happens at the end of the season. But by no means, at least me, am I fully blaming this season on Daniel Jones. I think there's a lot more that goes into it than that. So I don't think he's lying with anything he just said there. I think that's accurate. But Daniel Jones didn't look good, albeit he was missing Thomas. He was missing Barkley, and he was playing some elite defenses. Didn't look good. Did not take that step we were hoping that he would take. It was a small sample size. I get it. But I don't think he said anything wrong there. What's up, Nick Nation? Thanks for popping in the stream, man. Fisher says, hey, Chris, I hope you and your family had a great Thanksgiving. As always, keep up the good content. I appreciate that, Fisher, man. Thanks for popping in the stream, man. Not all DJ's fault, but he didn't look good and he did have a great second half against Arizona. He did have a good showing videos is hard on stream. What is there something wrong with the video, guys? Let me know. Is there something wrong with the video, guys? Oh, is lagging? Is it lagging, guys? I'm just trying to play the press conference for you guys. Is it lagging? Let me know. I'll keep up with the chat.
Realistic do you think it is for him to be back for training camp and for the season? And also, I know when they go in there sometimes, was it just the ACL? Or was it anything else that went along with that?
Yeah, I'm not getting into the specifics of the surgery. It went well. And then the recovery, like I said, I mean, it depends. I've seen guys come back in 8 months. I've seen guys, we've got some that still aren't back that had him a year ago. So again, we're probably gonna have to pull this kid back. Like, he's a hard worker. He's already in there. I saw him walking across the parking lot this morning, holding his crutches in his hands rather than using them. But, that's the type of kid he is. He's going to work very hard. We just got to protect him from himself and make sure he's doing things the right way and not overtraining. But again, it's really hard to say, Jordan, to be honest with you, being in this for as long as I've been in it.
How do you plan for it then, not knowing?
Kind of what I said earlier on, we're still going to have to address the position at some point because there's no guarantee he's going to be back week 1. and Tyrod's, his contract's up. So, we just got to figure out, those will be off-season decisions. As we go through the off-season, we'll have a little bit better idea of his return to play, as he continues the rehab.
So there's addressing the position, and there's using a possible first round pick on the position. So where are you on that spectrum? I mean, if there's a player that you like there that's a quarterback in the first round, would you make that choice?
Yeah, we'll take the best player available. If the best player available, for our team is at a certain position, we'll take it. I mean, we won't shy away from it. And again, that's a ways away. The draft in April, so we're still working through all that in the offseason progress. So we have to come up with a plan, like I said, just for the offseason right now. Tommy's the only one. I almost said Danny DeVito. Tommy's the only one that's under contract. So we'll look at all different avenues there.
Still believe in Daniel? How would you answer that?
I mean, I've seen it. I mean, you guys all saw last season. I mean, the guy won 10 games. He won a road playoff.
All right. So there, Schoen said, he basically said they're open to taking the best player available. What do you expect him to say? There's only so much you could take out of this press conference. He's not going to give away the Giants draft secrets, right? So what are you really going to take out of this, right? So I'm not surprised. He says we're going to go BPA, but he doesn't doubt. The one thing I will say, like if you're trying to read through the tea leaves and try to come up with anything, he's not like going above and beyond in his praise for Daniel Jones, right? He's not saying, oh, he's our franchise quarterback. He's our guy. The one thing that I found interesting when he answered that last question, when he asked him about replacing potentially Daniel Jones, he went out of his way, at least I felt like, to not mention the quarterback position. He kind of like mumbled around it. Maybe he doesn't want a soundbite of that because he knows it'll go viral. I don't know. But it seemed like he was going out of his way not to mention quarterback when he was asked specifically about the quarterback position. He said he was going to go for BPA. That's the one thing I guess that stood out to me if you're trying to read between the tea leaves. But listen, I stand where I stand. I definitely think quarterback is on the table, but I don't think it's a definite. It's not a lock, especially being where it looks like we're going to be picking, but it's certainly a possibility. The situation is fluid. That's a great way. That is a great way to put it, Jared. And that's the way it should be. You should never go into an offseason without knowing what's going to be presented to you as saying we're absolutely going quarterback no matter what. I'm going to force myself to take this quarterback no matter what. That's silliness. So that's the way it should be. Bookend says, for those wanting DJ to be the guy, be prepared. They may draft the quarterback. For that, we'll die if they don't draft the quarterback. Be prepared. They might not draft the quarterback. Exactly. That's the best way to put it. We don't know. Ari says Wednesday. I'll probably do a Nick Live. I got to look at the schedule, but I'll do a Nick Live at some point this week during the bye week for sure. Alexander says, I'm going to pump myself full of washer food if we don't draft the quarterback. Well, Alexander, I would at least try to, I would try to get the cheapest washer food you can now while it's on sale then, because there's a chance we won't be. So if you're going to do that to yourself, at least, save your family a little bit of money. Get the cheapest washer food that you can. And Independent says, Schoen learned fast about the New York market. 0 sound bites. Yeah, he's definitely trained. I didn't say it won't be a quarterback next nation. That's exactly what I said. He's open to the possibility of going BPA. That's what do you expect him to say? I didn't say he's not taking a quarterback. I think it's entirely possible that he could be taking a quarterback. But let's get back to the rest of it.
Game for the Giants. I mean, you guys saw the preseason. Again, I just think we got punched in the nose early on, and we dug ourselves a hole, and we weren't able to get out of it. We're trying to right now, but still believe in Daniel and the person.
Joe, when you look at your evaluation process, you have your plan. You guys set your plan up in scouting and college scouting. When you look through the season, you go to the games you're going to go to on the weekend.
Mm-hmm.
When things happen with the current roster, does that change your process at all, where you may go, what prospects you may scout, or do you kind of stick to your plan throughout and then assess after the season?
Yeah, you have to be able to adjust, and it's not necessarily our roster. It may be, hey, this kid at school X, we had really low.
All right. I see people, because I saw a lot of people talking about this sound clip. Let me go back to that, because that was a very popular choice of wording that people were pointing to on Twitter. Let me analyze this. Let me see if I agree with you guys when he just Daniel Jones, the person and not the player, right? That's what everybody's hammering home on Twitter. Let me see what he said.
You guys set your plan up in scouting and college scouting. When you look through the season, you go to the games you're going to go to on the weekend.
Mm-hmm.
when things happen with the current roster, does that change your process at all? Where you may go, what prospects you may scout, or do you kind of stick to your plan?
I think it was
throughout
earlier,
and
right?
then assess after the season.
Yeah, you have to be able to adjust, and it's not correct. So we'll look at all different avenues there.
Why do you still believe in Daniel? How would you answer that?
I mean, I've seen it. I mean, you guys all saw
There we go.
last season. I mean, the guy won 10 games. He won a road playoff game for the Giants. I mean, you guys saw the preseason. Again, I just think, we got punched in the nose early on, and we dug ourselves a hole, and we weren't able to get out of it. We're trying to right now, but still believe in Daniel and the person.
Joe, when you look at your evaluation
Eh.
process, you have your plan. You guys set
Eh.
your plan up.
All right, to be
Scout,
fair,
scout,
guys,
scout.
and I know everybody's jumping on that quote because a lot of people don't want Daniel Jones back. To be fair, guys, he prefaced that by saying, before he said Daniel Jones the person, whether you agree with it or don't, he prefaced it by listing a laundry list of examples of Daniel Jones the player. Got us to the playoffs, helped us win 10 games. So to be fair, I'm trying to be, fair in analyzing what he had to say. I'm not reading too much into that. I know it's a quote and people are gonna, I don't know, but we'll see. And let's see. Zach, man, I think you're being a member. He says, hopefully we can finish strong and let Joe cook in the offseason. He better. He doesn't believe in Daniel Jones. He might not. He might not. We're gonna. Well, I mean, he had to believe in him a little bit to give him the contract that he did, but may not believe in him long term. Let's keep going.
Typically make my schedule in August based around where we may play, geographically, where it's easy to get, meet back up with the team. So, you kind of have an initial top 100, how many of those can you go see? And my staff does a very good job. They kind of give me a 20 must see, 25 must see. And I try to see those schools, starting in August. I'll map it out.
How much work have you done on the top quarterbacks in this class?
I've done a lot of work on the entire draft. I'm further ahead this year than last year. Last year, kind of being the first in season as general manager, different schedule than what I've had in the past as an assistant GM or director of player personnel. So, I tweaked my process a little bit this year so I can stay up on, all positions.
Joe, there was how do you look at Saquon's season, both the injury and still being your most productive offensive player? And then there were some national reports that you still see him as part of your future. Can you address that?
Yeah, like I said, the UFAs we'll talk about after the season. We tried long and hard to get something done with him, and we'll see what happens in the off season. Saquon's, he's a captain. He comes to work every day. I know there were some questions a couple weeks ago about, still coming to work and is it, the longevity and the tread on the tires and all that stuff. And he comes to work every day. He does everything we ask. He's a great teammate. He's a captain. Big reason I think, as you're going through adversity, I think he's a big part of keeping the locker room together. And I respect Saquon a lot and the way he's handled himself through this entire process. And I have a lot of respect for Saquon.
Why did you make the Leonard Williams trade when you did? Obviously the deadline, but why did you make it there?
Yeah, I think, the draft compensation, when Seattle called and offered a second round pick, for a 29-year-old player that was on an expiring contract, we had 9 games left. It just made the most sense long-term in terms of the build.
Follow up on Evan Neal. You said he needs to play better.
Yeah.
But are you at a point at the end of his second year where you need to think about whether he's a tackle or he's a guard?
No, I don't think so. I've went back and watched the Alabama stuff. Like the kid can play. We just got to get him to be more consistent. Like I've got a lot of confidence in Evan. He's a hard worker. It's killing him right now to be out there. He's missing some valuable reps in year 2, but as soon as he's healthy, again, he's scratching and clawing to get back. We're looking forward to getting back there. But he knows there's some things he can do better, and that's
Okay. So that was definitive. But what do you expect Joe Schoen to say? I just hope Shane's not too stubborn with Evan Neal. But I don't expect him to give up on Evan Neal. He spent the 7th overall pick on the guy. What do you expect him to say? But that was pretty definitive. I think a lot of us have hinted at the fact, due to the fact that Evan Neal has not gotten better this year. If anything, he's gotten worse and he got hurt again. Should the Giants consider moving him to the guard position, specifically next to Andrew Thomas? Maybe he's better suited as a guard. Maybe that will help build up some of his confidence. Playing at a position that I think he may be better naturally fit to play, to be honest with you. He has a slow break off the line. He's strong. He might be better suited to play on the interior, much like Eric Flowers was after he left the New York Giants. Well, Joe Schoen came out there and definitively basically said, Evan Neal's going to be our right tackle next year. That's what he told you. He didn't play around there. That he's going to be your right tackle next year. Andrew Thomas going to be left tackle. Evan Neal's going to be the right tackle. We got to hope as fans that he develops, because if he doesn't, that could be a mess on that offensive line. So we'll see what they, how that plays out next year. But expect definitely to see Evan Neal to play right tackle next year for the New York Giants. That's for sure. But let's keep going.
That's what we expect from him.
Why did you make Saquon unavailable at the trade deadline? It seems kind of counter to how.
Oh, that's a good question.
Why did I make Saquon? I wasn't going to move him. We had a conversation about it. It wasn't even when it came. I think some of you guys asked a question about that maybe a couple of weeks before the trade deadline or the week of, and just to eliminate distraction. Like, again, I think it's what you just said. He's one of our most productive offensive players right now. To move that guy, it just didn't make any sense, and we didn't take any calls or receive any calls on him.
So where do you think the construction of the offensive line went?
Didn't make any sense. Now, if you're bringing Saquon back, which I assume is the plan at this point, yeah, I guess it didn't make any sense. You want to bring Saquon Barkley back on the team, but maybe that's the way that Shane probably should have answered that. But didn't make any sense. The team was floundering and spiraling out of control. If there was a market for Saquon, I think it could have made sense. Now, if your plans to bring him back, which I have said for weeks, I could see the value in that, especially if you're bringing in a young quarterback. You got to give him a little bit of support. Then I'm all for it. But I think it could have made sense if you didn't plan to bring him back. And obviously this past offseason, the Giants, Joe Schoen, obviously specifically, didn't show a ton of confidence in Saquon Barkley for the long term of this football team. And I understand both sides of it. I understood why Saquon Barkley was upset, and I understand why Joe Schoen was kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place, because he doesn't value the running back position and Saquon's injury history and everything else. I think Joe Schoen has kind of painted himself into a corner where he has to sign Saquon Barkley. It's kind of like when Dave Gettleman traded for Leonard Williams. Like, we all knew he had to sign Leonard Williams. He had to sign him to the extension. I think he's going to have to sign Saquon Barkley. I don't know if it's going to be a tag or not again, but I fully expect Saquon Barkley to be back next year. But I thought for sure that Shane would answer that differently. I thought he would have said, well, we expect to have Barkley, Well, he also doesn't want to tip his hand and give away too much in terms of negotiating power this offseason either, right? So that's kind of probably a smart answer. But deep down, I think Shane knows that if you read between the tea leaves as a fan, that he's probably bringing Saquon Barkley back. The only question now is it going to be a tag or is it going to be a multi-year extension? Let's see. He's definitely our best skill player. I think they're going to sign him. I just don't know if it'll be a tag or a multi-year extension. If we walk, do we get a comp pick? Yeah, but here's the thing, John. This is why the comp pick for Saquon doesn't make a whole lot of sense. What do you think Saquon's value is going to be on the open market? Let's start there. Saquon Barkley is a running back. He's going to be 27 next year, right? We saw how, like, Dalvin Cook, what was his market when he hit the open market? He's a damn good running back. So what do you think? What do you think Saquon's market's going to be? It's not like he's going to get what Jonathan Taylor got. Jonathan Taylor's 23 years old, 24 years old. He did what he did because he knew this is my opportunity to strike it big because I'm younger. So Barkley, maybe he gets 10 million a year, 12 million a year. If he hits the open market, that's probably equivalent to maybe a 4th round comp pick. And that's if you don't offset it by spending it on somebody else and bringing them into the organization. So for me, I think the smartest move for the Giants going forward with Saquon Barkley is you bring him back. Hopefully, ideally, it's a deal that I was hoping they would get done this offseason, a deal that equates to like a 2 years worth of franchise tag and guaranteed money. And you still have that possibility to trade him in the future. Like next year, if the Giants are not doing well and there's a team out there that thinks that Saquon Barkley could put them over the top, they're willing to give you pretty good draft compensation, you at least explore that. And he also is very valuable for a young quarterback, whether that be Jones or whether that be a rookie. So I think at this point you bring Saquon Barkley back. The only question is it as a tag or is it a multi-year extension? And I'm hoping they kind of meet in the middle and it's not like this outrageous deal, which I don't think it will be. I think Saquon Barkley understands that. He's got, if you're being real, and I know a lot of people, like are very pro Saquon Barkley, and I am too. He's my favorite player on the team. But if you're thinking about it from the mind of Joe Schoen, let's be fair here. Let's think about it from Joe Schoen's mindset. Let's not think about it from our mindset as fans. If you're Joe Schoen and last offseason, you weren't willing to give Saquon Barkley probably like $22 million guaranteed. No more than that. I don't even think he was willing to go that high, but let's say he was willing to go that high. Saquon Barkley last year was in the MVP conversation for the first half of the year. He was that good. He didn't miss a game. I know that he kind of tailed off a bit towards the second half, but he had a great year. Stayed healthy all year. The team made the playoffs. The team won a playoff game, so there was more pressure to have to retain your players because you had something to build off of. If you're Joe Schoen and you didn't give him big money last year, why would you give him big money this year? When he's a year older, at a position that typically breaks down around age 29, he's going to be 27. He got hurt this year. He didn't stay healthy all year. Not his fault. I'm not blaming him. But why would Joe Schoen value him more this offseason than he did last offseason? That's the question I have. And I hope they get something done. I don't want it to be a mess. I want to get a 2-year commitment done. That's what I'm hoping happens. But I don't know if that's going to be the case. But I hope they get something done. Let's see. Let's see. Let's keep going.
Wrong this year.
Where what?
Wrong.
Andrew Thomas getting hurt the first series of the game, the season. I mean, that doesn't help when you lose an all-pro left tackle. I think we have through 11 weeks, we had 9 different starting O-line combinations, which is the second most in 15 years. We have 21 different O-line combinations, which is the fourth most in 15 years. So, we were down to our 5th and 6th offensive tackles. It's hard to prepare for that when you have 8 or 9 on the roster. So when you go to camp, you're talking about your 5th and 6th offensive tackle being the fourth quarter of the 3rd preseason game. That's in reality, that's what you're talking about. So, we won 10 games with the same offensive line last year, with the exception of John Michael Schmitz. We inserted him for, Gates went on to Washington. I know you'd asked about him. And, Feliciano went on to San Francisco. So, again, we ran it back with the same guys. We thought John Michael would be an upgrade in there, which he's done a good job for us. And again, as you're building this, back to Patty's question, you have to, was it more weapons for Daniel? Was it outside backers? Was it corner? We're trying to build this thing as much as, we want instant gratification and, instant results. There's an element of patience as you build it and try to build it the right way. And you can't address everything overnight, and we're going to continue to work on it. And I do believe in building it up front, and offensive line's important, and probably didn't play as well as we needed to early on. And it's not all on the offensive line. Sometimes it's, 11 guys on the same page. Receiver doesn't run the right route. The quarterback doesn't get the read or doesn't pull the trigger. I mean, there's several different reasons. And then the continuity amongst those 5 is very important, whether you're passing off stunts in games, the communication up there. And when it's in a revolving door, it's hard for the continuity and those guys to gel consistently. So, and that's a long-winded answer, but there's various reasons to, some of the issues up front that we've seen this year, but, we'll continue to address it.
You better continue to address Mr. Schoen.
Injuries and stuff. How do you evaluate that and decide what you want to do with it moving forward?
Yeah, we have some guys that are up this year that are, that have started some games for us. So again, those would be, postseason conversations on, where we need to address, who do we want to bring back? What does it look like if we do bring some of those guys back? And then, the landscape of free agency and, the draft. So, those would be postseason conversations.
In terms of the depth chart or who plays, and I'm asking that because there's a theory out there that Eric Gray was kind of forced into the punt returner job because the front office used the draft pick on him and didn't want to see him wasted.
Yeah, that I understand where you're going with that. That's on me. To be honest with you, that's another Patty. Again, we tried to address the punt return. Like, we knew it was an issue in the draft.
How many times does Joe Schoen go back and say Patty again? Patty again? This guy loves Patty. Patty, if you're still listening, I don't think she is, but if she's still, we got to get him on our show. He loves Patty. He went out of his way to say how great of a question he asked. Patty again? Patty again? That's a good question.
Some of the guys we liked went probably higher than where we deem, you take a guy. Eric had done it at Tennessee and he did it at Oklahoma, and we were comfortable. The coaches were comfortable. We were comfortable going into the into the regular season based off what we were seeing. I know Crowder's having success in Washington. You bring him up. We kept 7 receivers. We couldn't keep 8. Do the math. Who do you move on from the group if you kept Crowder? So there were some moving parts in there, and that's just me being candid with you, and that's on me. The returner. I'm glad we got Gunner here, though. He's done a really good job for us. Eric's got a bright future, and we probably put him in a spot that wasn't most comfortable for him earlier, either. But he went out there, didn't flinch an eye, didn't bat an eye, and did what he could. But again, that's on me early on. We couldn't do everything overnight, and as much as we wanted to, and that was a position we continued to look for. And Pittsburgh let Gunner go, and we were able to get him.
Joe, is there any part of you that's I know you're not focusing on unrestricted free agency yet, but the overall financial health of the team going into this offseason and what you could potentially accomplish in terms of talent infusion because of where you guys are at there with the Bucs?
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's, free agency is hard. Obviously, I'd like to draft and develop and, sign our own, which we did. Some of those guys that, had been here in the offseason, retained some of the guys that were here previously. And, we got some good foundational pieces in some of the draft picks that are here. But to hit on a guy like Bobby O, who fits, everything that we're talking, smart, tough, dependable, and a good player. When we're divvying up those type of financial resources outside the building, you got to really make sure you're bringing in the right type of people as well. Their work ethic, the ability to learn the scheme. So there's some risk in free agency, but again, we'll do our homework, and we are in, relatively healthy.
I'd be stunned if Schoen this offseason is aggressive in free agency. Now, I will say Schoen was a little bit more aggressive than I thought he would be this offseason. But the pattern that you notice outside of the Bobby Okereke signing, they were all short deals. Even the Waller deal is only a 2-year commitment that we traded for. Do I think he may make one big signing? Sure. Could be at several positions. And I think the way that he'll analyze that is, what are the strengths of this draft class? What does he need as a stopgap filler in free agency that he can't obtain in the draft this year? Last year, he identified that to be the linebacker position. It was obviously a huge need of ours. He spent big on Bobby Okereke. This offseason, he'll look at the draft. He'll analyze the draft. He'll see the needs on this team, and he'll say, okay, that's one spot where I'm not going to be able to fill that with a long-term piece this year. Let me try to improve it in free agency. Whether that be the guard, whether that be maybe another edge rusher opposite Kayvon Thibodeau, maybe that being a stopgap corner if we let Adoree Jackson go, whether that be a stopgap safety if we let Xavier McKinney go. But I don't expect Joe Schoen to spend huge money in free agency. Last year it was pretty obvious before free agency started that we were going linebacker in free agency. There wasn't a linebacker we were going to take early in the draft. It was a pretty rich free agency class at that position, and it was such a massive need of ours. You could have actually argued it was our biggest need, at least on the defensive side of the football. We probably had the worst linebacking core in football. That's now actually become somewhat of a strength between Okereke and the evolution of Micah McFadden. But yeah, I think he'll look at the draft and see, what's the best way to go. But I don't think he's going to have like a big offseason in terms of free agency. I don't think he's going to move a ton of money around. I'd be surprised. But he may get a guard. He may get a guard. Giants Realist says, Mr. Schoen, if O-line continuity was so important, why the musical chairs in the offseason? Make it make sense. Also, fire Bobby Johnson. Sincerely, Giants fans. Yeah, here's what I'll say. Giants Realist, when you say musical chairs, I think what you're implying is why were they shifting all the guards to different spots in the preseason games? And I'm not going to kill them for that in the practices, because they're trying to find out what the best combination was. You haven't seen too much of that in game outside of when players have gotten hurt. You saw it a bit last year. But I get what you're saying. I think they didn't know what their best unit was, and they were kind of playing with it. And being that they had a really young center in John Michael Schmitz, I think they wanted him to be able to get exposure with different guys on different sides of him, that knowing that it's important to build continuity with a young rookie center. So in preseason, I actually didn't hate the idea of moving the guards around to different spots to get more familiar with John Michael Schmitz. In game, I'm never in favor of that. I hated when Joe Judge did that. I hated it. Bobby Johnson's gone. Giants realist. Bobby Johnson's gone at the end of the season. Gone at the end of the season. Every combo certainly sucks. That's for sure. Progressive Rock says Giants should not take a quarterback until the 4th or 5th round, and if he is good, let him finish the season. If he is bad, let Daniel Jones come back once he recovers from his injury. I'm not gonna go into this draft being dead set on I forgot who it was. I think it was Jarrett said. I'm fluid this offseason, at least right now, before I know where we're picking. I'm not going to go into the draft being like, well, I was of the belief we're going to have a top 2 or 3 pick 2 weeks ago. I'm no longer of that belief. So I'm not going to go into the draft saying we have to go quarterback no matter what. I'm open to different possibilities of what the Giants could do. And I'll formulate, I think, a more concrete opinion once I know where we're picking and who's available. But yeah, I could certainly see that being an avenue that the Giants go down. I think the quarterback position is going to be addressed in some way, shape, or form this offseason. Shane even said it throughout this press conference. I think there's really 3 paths that you could go. One, you show aggression. You love a guy in the first round, and you do what you got to do to go up and get him. And what I'll say is this. If the Giants are taking a quarterback in the first round this year, they're going to trade up to get him. If they're picking 6th or 7th, they're going to move up to make sure they get that guy. That's what's going to happen. They're not going to sit on their hands and knees and be like, I hope this guy falls to us at 6 or 7. I don't think that's going to happen. I think they're going to show aggression and they're going to go up and get him. Even if it's the 3rd quarterback off the board, they're going to ensure they get that guy. They'll move up from 7 to 5, 7 to 4, whatever it may be. That's option number 1. That's what I could see happening. Option number 2 is you bring in a veteran with some credentials. Who that guy is, I don't know. I haven't looked at free agency. But you bring in a solid veteran. Because when you think about it, there's a lot of veterans from around the league that would probably be attracted to the Giants position to play quarterback and would probably play her for not a lot of money, knowing that they may get an opportunity like what Teddy Bridgewater did when he went to the Saints, right? There may be a talented quarterback or a semi-talented like fringe starter that might be like, oh, yeah, I'll come and play there because I might get an opportunity to start. And I get to play for Brian Dable. I get to showcase my skill set. And then maybe somebody pays me a decent amount of money the following year. So I could see something like that taking place. And then the third option is exactly what you just said, Progressive. I think it's if you're not going early, you wait until early day 3, maybe very late day 2, 3rd, 4th, 5th round area. You draft a high upside quarterback prospect. And if he turns into a starter down the line, great. If he's a long-term backup, you're okay with that, with a 4th or 5th round pick. So I think those are the 3 options, but I think they're going to draft a quarterback. It's just a matter of what path do they go. But I think those are the 3 avenues. But we'll see. We'll see. And Dr. Man, what's going on? He says, real issue is the report friction between Dabes and Wink. Yeah, listen, I don't read too much into the Wink and maybe a guy like Mayfield. I'm not the biggest Mayfield fan, but yes, a quarterback of that caliber. Yes, a guy that can step in and start and not be an embarrassment. Somebody that could push Daniel Jones. Like that, they're going to do that at a bare minimum. I think it could be more than that for sure, but that's at a bare minimum. But as far as the real issue between Dabes and Wink, I think there's something there. I don't think it was just reported to be reported. I think there's something there. I don't think, I said it earlier in the stream, I don't think it's as harsh as he let on in the report on Fox, but I think there's something there. I don't think he would have just put his reputation on the line for nothing. I think there's something there. But I'm not surprised by it. Like, what do you guys think happens when, like, you think about it? If you're Wink Martindale, How upset would you be if you were the defensive coordinator that you go out there every week, you get this defense prepared every week, and the offense is doing nothing to help support you, right? Brian Dable's the offensive coordinator. So I'm not surprised. The team's 4-8. They were 2-8 2 weeks ago. Season's going nowhere fast. This is the first year where this coaching staff and this general manager are getting tested in terms of adversity. So I'm not surprised that there's tension between the coaching staff. So, yeah, I think there's some legitimacy to that. I think Glazer probably made it sound worse than it was when he said that they're going to potentially fire him from within season. But, yeah, I think there's something to that. I'm not surprised by that. John says, God, this would be demoralizing if we just trot DJ out again. Don't you think the fan base has moved on? Yeah, but John, I'm ready to move on too. I'm part of the fan base. I'm ready to move on too. And I'm with you guys. I understand. I want hope too. Do you think I, as a guy that comes on here and talks about the New York Giants, wants to go into next year talking about a quarterback that I know 80%, 90% of the fan base wants to move on from, that I know in my heart of hearts is not going to be the long-term answer to this football team? Because that's what I feel. I can't lie. That's what I feel. Do you think I want to go into next year with that? No, I don't. That's just the reality. That's the truth of the matter. But I also don't want the New York Giants to just force a quarterback pick to make the fan base happy, because that's how you end up with Daniel Jones again. So that's where I'm at. It's like, yeah, I want to move on from Daniel Jones, but if I'm moving on from Daniel Jones and I'm spending heavy draft capital early on in the draft, I don't want another Daniel Jones. So if you're Joe Schoen, you better be dead set on that quarterback. That's all I want. I don't want you to just take a quarterback for the sake of taking one. Oh, this guy's a little bit better than Daniel Jones. Let's take him. No. I don't want you to put your career at jeopardy, your career on the line, and potentially set this franchise back another 4 or 5 years just to extend your job for another year and build more hope into the fan base. That's where I'm at. I don't want you to just take a quarterback to take one. But I don't want to go into next year with no alternative to Daniel Jones. I don't want that. But it's just the reality of the situation. You can't force a quarterback pick either. So we'll see what happens. You had hope going into this season and lost it in 5 games. Well, yeah, John, I did. I had hope, but Daniel Jones now suffered 2 injuries this year. Another one to his neck, a second neck injury. He tore his ACL. He's played 1 year at the end. He's not an irreplaceable quarterback. I didn't think going into the year that the New York Giants were going to be picking in the top 5. And I didn't think Daniel Jones would suffer another season-ending injury and a second injury to his neck. My opinion's allowed to change. I'm not going to just stay steadfast in my opinion. I expected Daniel Jones to get better this year. And I understand and recognize it's not all his fault. A lot of it's bad luck. But it is what it is. So that I want hope going into the future. Right now, Daniel Jones to me doesn't present hope. I don't believe and trust that he's capable of staying healthy long term. At this point, how could you? How could you? And I know a lot of people are going to say the offensive line and everything else, and I get it. The offensive line is abysmal. But there's a clear track record now that this guy can't stay on the football field. He's had 1 year where he stayed healthy start to finish. One. And he didn't show enough growth for me this year. And I know it's not his fault. And I wouldn't even put it mainly on him. But he didn't help himself with the way that he played this year. If they're in a position to draft a quarterback, I'm gonna get on board with it. But again, I don't want them to force it either. And hey, maybe Daniel Jones changes my opinion next year if he's forced to come back. Maybe he plays great, and I will support him. But I'm not gonna just blindly support a guy. When the guy has another 2 serious injuries within a year, I'm just not going to. Let's see. DJ will be the quarterback next year in the future. Anthony. I hope you're right. I hope it works out and he's the next Eli Manning. I just don't think it's going to happen.
The cap situation, and we can move some things around if we need to open up more. But I think we'll be judicious in our process in terms of the free agency market.
Do you look changes to the coaching staff, and what would your involvement be in any decision like that?
Yeah, those are all. I know you guys just asked Dave's about that, so those are all postseason conversations, and I'll lean on Dave's on that.
When you look at this team and this roster, in your second year. Is this more in your head, a 10-win team that made the playoffs, or a 4-win team that is lost 4 out of the first whatever games and needed a 2-game winning streak to get there? Is there you're right or is it wrong at this point?
Say that again.
Well, I mean, last year you won 10 games and made the playoffs. Do you look at yourself, look at this team as that is what we are, or is it more a 4-8 team is what you are right now?
Yeah, it's still you are what your record says you are. We're 4-8 right now. Unfortunately, there were some close games. Yeah, there's a couple games we wish we'd have back recently, but we're 4-8 and we're having some adversity this year. But I've got a lot of confidence in the coaching staff. Again, I think we have some young pieces on the roster to build around. And again, I think we're the second youngest team in the league, so some guys are getting some valuable playing time. And again, it takes time. It takes a couple off seasons. It takes a few drafts to build it, the right way. And again, trust me, it hurts, when you lose and you're 4-8, and it's not fun. But you don't want to lose sight of the big picture and the proper way to build the roster. And that's what we got to stay focused on.
That report said there was a chance that Martindale might not finish the season with you guys.
Oh, yeah.
Is that something you have to look into? What's your role in figuring out or getting to the bottom of whatever that is?
What was the I didn't see. What was the report?
You didn't see the report?
That Wink's not going to make it through the season?
Jay Glazer from Fox reported that there was a chance that Martindale might not even make it through the season and that he probably wouldn't be back after the year. That was yesterday morning on Fox's national broadcast.
Yeah, I didn't realize he said they wasn't going to make it through the year. Yeah, I think Dave's just addressed that.
So I didn't see what Dave's just said before this, so I don't know how he addressed it. But that was the part of it that I thought that was probably overblown by Glazer. But I do think there's probably some legitimacy to it in terms of tension in the locker room between Dable and Wink, and probably not just Dable and Wink, probably Dable and a lot of members of the coaching staff. Just because how poor the team has played. But yeah, I don't believe that they're going to fire him before the end of the year. I think that was probably Glazer just trying to sell drama. And yeah, Chris, I talked about that earlier in the stream, man. Yeah, Pest was a great guy, man. Got to meet him several times, and I'm going to miss him. I was looking forward to going to another Giant game with him in the future. He was a season ticket holder. I think he lived in, what was it, Maryland or D.C.? He was a season ticket holder. He traveled up, went to Giant games from time to time. So definitely really sad to see him go. He's been on my channel several times. So was really upset about that when I heard about it yesterday. Your react to the DJ Dripic was correct. I don't want to be correct, man. I say it all the time. I want to look like the biggest fool in the world. I don't want to be correct about that. Add Micah Parsons, one of the best linebackers in the league. Love Danny Jones. What's your point? What does that mean? What does Micah Parsons have to do with Daniel Jones? And I saw Joe mention this earlier about Joe Burrow. Why don't you say this about Joe Burrow? Because you don't hate Joe Burrow. I don't hate Daniel Jones either. I was supporting Daniel Jones as much as I could. Why don't I say it about Joe Burrow? I don't know if you checked. Joe. Last I checked, that's a New York Giant logo. It's not a Cincinnati Bengal logo. I don't talk about Joe Burrow. I don't care about the Cincinnati Bengals. And to compare Joe Burrow to Daniel Jones, as much as I love Daniel Jones and he's the quarterback of my football team, is asinine. Joe Burrow went to a Super Bowl. Joe Burrow is one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the NFL. What are you talking about? What are you talking about? Yeah, I understand Joe Burrow's gotten hurt. Joe Burrow's one of the best quarterbacks in the league. Let's see. What's up, Alex, man? Thanks for popping the stream, man. And let's keep going here.
Yeah, listen, there's always going to be noise. I mean, there's a lot of noise in this market. It is what it is. I know what we think inside those 4 walls, and that's what matters. Like, again, I've got a great relationship with Wink. I don't know where some of this stuff comes from. And, again, that's I'll yield to Dabes on what he said on that.
What have you seen about the relationship between Wink and Dabes? So, like, that's what it was about.
22 months we've been here, it hasn't changed.
You said that you had a lot of faith in the coaching staff. What are your thoughts on how Dabes has handled the adversity compared to last year? Must have been easy compared to the
Yeah,
challenges you had this year?
it's easy to lead when you're winning and you're out front and you're running out front. It's easy to lead. So I think, again, as we continue to build this, it's year 2 going through adversity. You find out a lot about people, and it's been challenging for everybody in the building, including myself and Dave's, and how you lead when things aren't going well, I think is important. And I think Dave's has done a good job. Again, like, we're starting an undrafted free agent, the last 2 games, and we've won 2 games. So I mean, it's not easy to keep everybody together, but there's a lot of those guys in the locker room that are under contract for past this season, and understand there's a we're still in it. It's 2023, and we're focused on the Packers, but the big picture as well. So again, to go up in front of that team when things aren't going well, or there's injuries or whatever it may be, it's not easy. Or you trade a veteran player who's the leader in the locker room. That's not easy. It's not easy to do. So, myself and Dave's as leaders within the organization are still learning as well. But through trying times, I think we found out a lot about the people in the building, the players on the roster, and that'll benefit us, going forward.
When Leonard talked about in Seattle after the trade, he kind of made comments. He said when he met with you, the way he framed it, it seemed like it was almost you gave him a choice as to whether or not he would be traded to Seattle. Is that how that played out, or were there, what was that conversation like?
Yeah. All right, I understand the question. I'll keep our conversation between Leo and I. I think, Paul, it was you that talked to Brandon Parker. I think he did a wonderful job articulating and mapping out exactly what happened. I got a lot of respect for Leonard, and again, I'll keep our conversation between us. And I think Brandon did a good job of walking through that process and how that went down.
Leonard said you didn't want to go to Seattle, you wouldn't have made that trade.
Never. It's a hypothetical. I don't. All right, I'm not going to get into it. Like, yeah, I understand.
Intuitive to how you really carried your first season, and how you've really not
Yeah.
the relationship aspect of it, but the idea of a team came with a 2nd round pick to you, a draft asset like that. The fact that you would put it in the player's hands, at least that's how it was portrayed through the agent and through the player.
Yeah, and that won't happen for everybody. Just Leo and where we were, and
That was a really interesting story that came out when the Giants traded Leonard Williams. If you haven't heard about it, I'm sure most of you have. Leonard Williams came out after the fact when he was traded to the Seattle Seahawks, and he said that the Giants basically said, "We're not going to trade you unless you approve of this. We're going to give you the option." And I thought that was a really good look for the New York Giants. Now Shane's going to later he's already leading into it. He's going to go on to say that was a one-off. We're not going to do that for every player, but I think that was a good look for Shane and the Giants when Leonard Williams came out and said that, because it is attractive potentially for other players to want to come and play for the Giants, that they do right by their players, and obviously shows that they care about the people in the building. But that was interesting, and I think that was a slam dunk trade. That was a great trade by the Giants to be able to get a 2nd and a 5th round pick for Leonard Williams, who I think is a good player. I thought he was going to be much better actually this year than he was. That was a great trade by the Giants. It's probably Joe Shane's best trade since he's been here. And John, I don't even know if I disagree with this statement, by the way. I think if we had a legitimate line, Jones would look good. I still believe Jones could win football games on a good football team if you support him properly. I still believe that. I don't think he's as bad as some of these other people make him out to be, but again, we'll talk about it during the offseason. We'll see what opportunities present themselves for this football team. If the right one's there, I think you got to move on. But we'll see in the offseason. That's just my opinion on the matter. But let's continue.
Again, these aren't just, as much as you'd like it to be transactional in fantasy football, like just drop a player, add a player, drop a player, add a player. There's a human element to it. There's a locker room element that you got to think about. The ripple effect, still a lot of games left. So that was a very difficult decision on many fronts, just as many pros as cons. So again, I'll just keep Leo and I's conversation between us, but that's the human element of this job. Like, it's, what makes sense for the franchise moving forward versus, relationships, locker room, perception. You got to take all that into account.
Joe, going back to something you said earlier about, you learn about people during adversity and whatnot. What have you learned about yourself, and what do you feel you can do better moving forward as you approach these last few games in the upcoming off season?
What have I learned about myself? Yeah, it's you got to have a good poker face, because as bad as it eats you up, inside when things aren't going well, people are looking to you for confidence and hope that things are going to get better. And I know that because I've been on the other side of it. My second year in Buffalo, I think we were 6-10, and at this point in Buffalo, we had the exact same record that we have here. But you're always looking to the leaders, whether it's my scouts, the coaches, the assistant coaches, that things are going to get better and they're going to be okay. And you got to go through the building on a weekly basis and listen, trust the process, trust the plan. We're going to get this thing going. I've got a lot of talented people in the building, whether the personnel staff or the coaching staff you're going to go through adverse times in the NFL. And you got to understand that things are going to get, they're going to be better, and trust the process, and it takes time. And, I believe that, the staff in there, has stuck together and been strong, and they understand where we're going and what the big plan, the big picture is. And that's what I'm looking forward to.
Joe, specifically with the quarterback position with Daniel, I imagine you know what you have in him. What you believe his potential is, or what you see, basically what you evaluated him over the last couple of years and throughout his career before he came here.
Mm-hmm.
How do you balance the known with the possibility of acquiring an unknown with a different ceiling with something like that?
Good question.
Trying to figure out. So the known of Daniel, I would say
another acquiring another player through the draft or something like that,
yeah,
where you don't necessarily know what his ceiling is because he hasn't played in the league.
Right. Yeah, and there's always risk. I mean, look at the past however many years of top 10 quarterbacks. I just went through it in 2018 draft, and how many of those guys are starting, or how many are with different teams. Some are out of the league that were taken in the first round from that draft. So, again, it's not a position you can just evaluate on film. I don't believe you got to get with these kids. You got to meet with them. You got to get around them. You got to put them on the board. Can they learn? Can they process information? You got to talk to the people, especially in this market, like bringing a quarterback into this market. I mean, it's not for everybody. Not everybody can handle it. But again, could be a free agent, whatever. We're going to have to address it at some point. Again, that may be, we have a UFA here that, we could always sign back. So there's different ways that we could address the position. But there's no guarantees as of right now that Daniel will be ready week 1. So that's how you got to approach it. Like, who can we bring in that can maybe help us win a couple games while Daniel gets healthy, or, maybe Daniel will be ready week 1. There's just some unknowns right now. And
with you guys,
as we get closer to free agency, where he
I
is
know a lot of
rehab
people in chat don't
and how
want
we
to hear
need
this.
to approach the offseason.
And again, I'm not going to read too much into this press conference. I'm going to be honest with you guys. Just the way that Shane's answering these. And again, this is not gospel. My opinion may definitely change in 2 or 3 months. I get the feeling of the vibe, at least. I don't think we're taking a first-round quarterback. Based on the way he's answering these questions. Now, like he said to preface this answer, he's talking about a poker face. So he's probably not, again, could easily be trading up. But the one thing I'll say about Shane, since he's taking the job, he's a straight shooter. I definitely think we're going to address the quarterback position. I don't know if we're going to take a first-round quarterback. We'll find out, though. We'll find out. That's going to be the big topic of conversation this offseason. But we'll find out. I definitely think we're taking a quarterback. I just don't know if it's going to be in the first round. And Coach says no quarterback can play behind this offensive line. I agree with that. Listen, at the end of the day, Coach, I agree with that. I want you to know that. And I think you do if you watch my channel. I agree. Now, can certain quarterbacks look better? Sure. But if this offensive line doesn't get better, whoever we draft is going to fail too. And the same people that are crying to take a quarterback will be crying to take a quarterback in 3 years. If we don't fix the line, it's the guy that is the toast of the town now. If he comes in here, he will be the toast of the town for 1 year, and then it'll be destroyed. I agree. The line needs to get significantly better. No argument there. I believe that in my heart of hearts, but I think both need improving. I think if you have an opportunity to take a guy with a higher ceiling than Daniel Jones, if you're picking at the top of the draft, you should do it. But we don't know where we're going to be picking, and we don't know what opportunities we're going to have thrown our way. So we still have 5 more games to play. We don't know where we're going to be picking. But I agree. I think both need to be improved upon. Let's see. I mean, Tommy DeVito's a nice story. He's been fun to watch. let's also be real. Like, let's put it in context. And I'm rooting for Tommy DeVito. I think Tommy DeVito has played well enough to probably become a backup quarterback in the NFL. I think he's played well. I don't think he's a starter. But let's also be fair. And I know people don't want to be, because people just want to throw Daniel Jones out of town. And I'm with you guys at this point. If the right opportunity is there, I want to draft the quarterback. The Giants have created 6 turnovers in the last 2 games. The Giants, they scored 10 points this past week when they had how many turnovers did they? No, they created like 9 turnovers. I think they had 6 turnovers against Washington. They've created like 9 turnovers in the last 2 games. Like, let's be fair. But DeVito's made some plays. He made a couple of really nice throws last week. I'm not saying he hasn't, but let's be fair. Let's see. Albin says, Chris, I think for most fans, there has been very little improvement in I agree. I don't think his ceiling. I don't think Daniel Jones' ceiling is high enough to. I've said it now for like 5 weeks. I don't think his ceiling is high enough for him to be irreplaceable. And I think there's only 5 or 6 quarterbacks I could say that about. And if you have the opportunity to replace him, you do it. And that's not just with him. That's most quarterbacks in the NFL. Let's see. Let's see. The Giants are second in the league in 3 and outs on defense. I know. I saw that stat yesterday, Sherrod. I was blown away. But for the remaining 5 games, they need to start DeVito. And I agree. I don't want to see. I mean, if they start Tyrod, they start Tyrod. I'm not going to cry about it. But me personally, it has nothing to do with. I think DeVito. Like, if DeVito was stinking it up, and he was playing like, I don't know, you name the quarterback. Let me just get rid of this. We're done with the press conference. But if DeVito was stinking it up and playing like, what's his name? Jake Fromm, I would say, yeah, put Tyrod back in. But I think these next 5 games, I want to see if DeVito could become the backup. I think these are a valuable 5 games. And if you stick with Jones next year, or if you draft a quarterback, you want to see if DeVito could start the year for you potentially for a couple of weeks. Because obviously, if you're going to roll with Jones again, and I don't know what they're going to do, but if you're going to roll with Jones again, you want DeVito, you want to have enough confidence that DeVito could play the first 2 or 3 games before Jones is ready. And if you're going to draft a rookie, you probably want a guy the same thing 2 or 3 weeks before you insert him into the starting lineup. So I do think it's valuable to see if DeVito could turn into a cost-effective backup. So I'm with you. I want them to roll DeVito out there for the next 5 weeks. Plus, he's fun. He's a fun story. He's a local kid, undrafted, right? And so it's fun. It's fun. He's kind of like I wouldn't put it on this level, but he's kind of like the Jeremy Lin of the New York Giants, right? He's the guy that came out of nowhere, and he's the underdog story. So it's fun. It's something for us to tune in to watch week to week. But I do think it's it would be good to see him get some reps to see if he could develop into a backup. Grim says he also said he'd take BPA. Jaden Daniels could be the BPA in their mind. He also said he wasn't chopping Kadarius Toney. He lies well, which is good. Well, that's what you want your GM to do. And yeah, listen. I'm not gonna take it off the. I don't know what we're gonna do, but I will have a better idea. I think a better. Once the season's over, I'm not always right. Sometimes I'm wrong, but I'll have a more educated guess. I think by the end of the year, at least in terms of what I think we're going to do. I like to think I'm usually pretty close. Sometimes I'm wrong. I was right. I thought we'd sign Jones. I was wrong. I thought he'd play better. I was right. I thought we'd draft Deonte Banks and specifically a corner in the first round. I was right about Andrew Thomas or the tackle in general. Maybe not Thomas specifically, into 2020. Sometimes I'm wrong. Sometimes I'm right. But I'll have a better understanding of where I think where we'll be headed when I see what draft pick we have. I think Jaden Daniels is going, and I said this like 3 weeks ago. I think Jaden Daniels is going to be the Anthony Richardson of this year's draft class. I think he's the prospect where when you get to see him at the combine and you see his physical attributes and he runs the 4.3 40, everybody's going to be drooling over him. He's going to soar up. He's probably going to be a top 5 pick. That's what I think is going to happen with Jaden Daniels. And obviously the fact that he's going to probably win the Heisman is only going to catapult the stock even more. So that's what I think is going to happen. I don't know if he's going to be there where we're picking, And I don't know if the Giants are going to prefer him. I have no idea. To be fair, I haven't gotten enough of an opportunity to watch a whole lot of Jaden Daniels. I've seen highlights, but highlights don't tell you a whole lot. I want to see him play in a game. This past week, I knew that he was playing, but I wasn't going to miss the Michigan game. I mean, come on, the best college game of the year. So I didn't watch Jaden Daniels this week. I probably should have taped the game. I didn't. I know people are raving about him. He's putting up great stats. I got to watch him, before I formulate an opinion on him. I know with Jaden Daniels, the constant comparison that I hear people bring up is Lamar Jackson. And listen, I can't argue with Lamar Jackson's results. I mean, listen, the guy's one of the winningest quarterbacks in the NFL since he's entered the league. I don't know if that's the type of quarterback that the Giants are going to prefer. I don't know. You look at what the Bills did, and that's all I could go off of because that was the one guy that they traded up for, that Joe Schoen and Brian Dable were a part of the evaluation process. You look at the quarterback that they traded up for, it was more of a bigger-bodied quarterback, a guy that was 6'5", massive. Jaden Daniels is kind of small in stature, right? He's kind of a thin, he's 6 foot. He's more of a run-first quarterback, I would say, than more of a guy that's, or at least balanced run to pass. So I don't know. I don't know if that's going to be their preference in terms of style of quarterback. We'll find out. But yeah, I wouldn't take him off the table. I think he's certainly a possibility for the Giants. I think there's several quarterbacks. I know people are going to hate me saying the name. I don't care. I like him. I don't know if I like him at 6th overall, where I think we're going to be picking. I like J.J. McCarthy. I think he's a possibility. I do. I like him. I like his tools. When I look at these quarterbacks, I don't just look at their stats. I look at the arm strength. I look at what I feel is upside. I like him. I think he's going to be a first-round pick. I think he's a possibility. I don't think Bo Nix is a possibility. I don't like Bo Nix. Not as an early first-round pick. I don't like him as an early first-round pick. But we'll see. I think the Giants will have some options, but in the end, it'll come down to Joe Schoen. Let's see. What's up, baby, man? Thanks for popping in the stream, man. I don't think Daniel Jones lacks talent. I don't think Daniel Jones' problem is talent. I don't. I think it's his processing. And I think Daniel Jones' internal clock is just screwed up. I think he's become Eli Manning, what Eli Manning was at the end of his career. He's become that. His internal clock is just completely screwed up because of years of beatings. And this year, the offensive line was as bad as it is. And I think he just wants to get rid of the ball because he knows a hit's coming. I think that's part of it, too. But when I watch Daniel Jones, I understand from just like a physical skill standpoint why he was a first-round pick. He's got arm strength. He's mobile. He's accurate. He's got tools. The tools just haven't evolved to the point where they should. I think he's got talent. We need to draft Wolverine because that would be good. Can the Giants draft? I think they could. JJ needs to go back to school. He might, but I don't know if he will or won't. I think a lot of it, Coach Dave, is going to depend on what his draft stock is like. And a lot of that's probably going to depend on how he finishes the year, right? In terms of the college playoffs. Does he help drive his draft stock up? So that'll be a lot to do with it with J.J. McCarthy. Did you think I said COCK? Clock. You pervert. Clock. Let's see. See, I know you're not talking about me, Knicks Nation, but it's not pathetic. This is where we could disagree, and that's fine. We could have healthy disagreements. I despise when people use the word excuse for things that every offense in the NFL should strive to be good at. I don't think it's an excuse. When people point out that the New York Giants have the worst offensive line in the NFL, that's not an excuse. That's a fact. That's a fact. Now, could Daniel Jones be better? Yeah, nobody's saying he can't. But the offensive line is atrocious. And when people say that if this offensive line does not get better, you're not going to be able to maximize whoever you put behind there at center, that's not an excuse. That's a fact. And when people say that the Giants haven't had an elite receiver since Odell Beckham, that's not an excuse. That's a fact. They haven't. That's the truth. Those are facts. Those aren't excuses. Can Daniel Jones play better? Absolutely. Can we use a quarterback that has more potential? Absolutely. But I don't view those as excuses. I view those as things that need to be improved upon significantly if you expect this team to compete with the big boys. Grim says Daniel is thin, but he's sick. He's not that thin, Daniel. He's bigger than I. He's like 230, isn't he? Oh, Daniels, you're talking about Jaden Daniels. Yeah, he's 6'3", 6'4", but he's like 208, right? But he could bulk up. And again, I haven't gotten to watch him. I'm just going based off of what people say in terms of his player comparisons and everything else. I don't know if that's the style of quarterback that they're going to want. They may. I don't know. The one thing I'll say is Dable seems like the type of guy where he may not have a specific style of quarterback. He's the type of guy that he's going to draft a quarterback and he's going to try to build his team around that player's strengths. So they may not shy away from a Lamar Jackson style quarterback, I'm going to say a run first quarterback. I think Lamar Jackson's biggest strength is his legs. Sue me. I'm not saying he can't throw, but I think his biggest strength is his legs. They may not shy away from a guy like that. Let's see. Jaden Daniels is risky, not only because he's a runner, but he doesn't slide enough. Let's see. Bowers is great, but not what we need in the first. I don't want Bowers. Not in the first round. Again, I haven't watched him. I'm just going based off of what people tell me. I consider Lamar Jackson a run first quarterback who could certainly throw. If that's his player comp, like that's what I'm envisioning. I haven't watched him. Den says DJ can win and be more than decent, but I strongly believe not with the Giants with all the issues we have. I can't disagree with you. He hasn't won a whole lot since he's been here. Payback, what's going on, man? If you had any choice of quarterback in this draft, who's your guy? I got to go with my guy. I got to go with Caleb Williams. I'm a big fan of Drake May the more I watch him. I'm not even going to lie to you, Payback. I didn't watch a whole lot of Drake May, if at all, before this year. And I heard rumblings about him last year, and people were saying him and Caleb were going to be at the top of this class. I watched a ton of Caleb before this year. The more I watch Drake May, the more I'm like, wow. And the more I'm like, wow. Like his arm and strength is insane. Like his off-platform throws, his ability to throw on the run, the velocity he's able to throw the football when he's going off balance against his body. That one throw he made this past game was insane, 25 yards a dot. And he has everything I want in terms of measurables for a quarterback. He's 6'4", big arm, tons of athleticism. He's got mobility. Like he's the complete package. But listen, I've been a big fan of Caleb Williams since the first time I watched him play. I watched and this is before I even consider. I was like, there's no way the Giants are going to draft this guy. So it had nothing to do with the Giants. I've always loved Caleb Williams since the first time I watched him play. I think 2 years ago at USC. I think he's incredible. His ability to make plays when things break down, you can't teach that. That's God-given. So he's special, and that's what I look for when I'm looking at potential quarterback prospects, right? I want guys that do things that the average quarterback can't. And I think Caleb Williams certainly fits that mold. I think Drake May does too. I think both of them warrant being drafted first and second in this year's draft. But if I had to pick one, I'd probably pick Caleb Williams. But I'm not going to be upset either way. I mean, Drake May is special. He's really good. I'm going to go with the chalk. That's where most people feel. But those two guys really stand out to me. What color do I like his fingernails? Let's see. I take a cheaper, younger, possibly better tight end at this point on this team. Waller is I mean, I would too, but I'm not taking him with the 7th, 6th overall pick. We have too many pressing needs. Yeah, I know. Here's my thought process on Jaden Daniels, and I'm not saying he's not good. I'm sure he is. His stats are overwhelming, and I've seen some of his highlights. He looks really good. But this is my honest opinion of why Jaden Daniels, and I'm not saying it's unwarranted, but this is why I think Jaden Daniels is getting a lot more pump up from Giants fans over the last week or two. Because you didn't hear his name, really, until about 2 weeks ago. You heard it a little bit, but now you're hearing it a lot. And I think a major reason for that are Giants fans are just looking to find a quarterback to fall in love with because they want to move on from Daniel Jones. So, that's the next guy, Jaden Daniels. And if it's not him, it'll be another. I think people are just looking. And I'm not saying he may very well be worth the pick. I got to look more into him before I could develop an opinion on him. But I just feel like Giants fans are just looking for a reason to fall in love with the quarterback that they feel is most realistic that the team could select. That's honestly what I feel right now. Not to say that it's not warranted. He's got talent. He's having a good year. Let's see. Where is Bowers going to be drafted? I think definitely mid to early first round. I mean, I've been looking at the mocks, but there's always when there's a special tight end, there's always a tight end that goes, early, right? So, Pitts, Hawkinson, he's probably going to fit that mold, like a top 10 pick. Did the Texans have a good offensive line when they drafted Stroud? No, and I don't think not having a good offensive line should prevent you from drafting a quarterback if you feel he has elite potential. Then you do everything in your power to fix that offensive line as quickly as you can. But no, if you think you have a special quarterback, you take him. See, D, and I can respect that opinion. I can respect that opinion. But for me, my opinion, it's not, is he better than Jones? I don't want to spend a top 5 or 6 pick on a quarterback that's just better than Jones. That's not the answer for me. Because the fact of the matter is this, D. If the quarterback that you draft with a top 5 or 6 pick does not evolve to be a franchise quarterback, I don't care if he's better than Jones. It's a waste of a pick. So that's not the bar for me. Is he better than Jones? It's not about being better than Jones. It's about can this guy be Josh Allen? Can this guy be Pat Mahomes? Not Pat Mahomes, but in that class. Can he be that franchise-altering quarterback? Because if he can't, you're not taking him. It's not about is he better than Jones. That's not how I feel. I don't want to just take a quarterback to take a quarterback. Let's see. Mark says the Texans pay over $40 million for the tackles. Can't compare it to the makeshift line we've had this year. That's a fact. Exactly, Slink. That's how I feel. I want him to be. I don't want to be doing this again in 5 years. I don't want to be doing this in 5 years. I would sooner, if I was Joe Schoen and I didn't feel there was a CJ Stroud in this class or where I could potentially get a quarterback, I would sooner just say, okay, well, I'll bite the bullet with Jones another year. I'm paying him a lot of money. I'll draft a quarterback that's a developmental player later in the draft, and I'll continue to build up the rest of my roster. I'm not going to force myself, put my career on a quarterback I'm lukewarm about. That's my opinion. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen. They may love Jaden Daniels. They may love J.J. McCarthy. Drake may slip. I'm not saying that won't be the case. Let's see. Listen. There's a good chance I'll like him too. I've only watched highlights. I haven't watched his games yet, but there's a good chance I'll like him too. I know he's got talent. I've seen him make some really good throws. Trade for Josh Allen, yes or no? Here's the thing, man. Here's the thing with Josh Allen. Of course I would trade for Josh Allen, but why would the Bills do it? Why would the Bills do it? And I know the Bills are not having a great year. I know they're 6-6, but Josh Allen is ridiculous. He's one of the top 3 or 4 quarterbacks in the league. Why would the Bills trade Josh Allen? It's not going to happen. It's a pipe dream. It's not going to happen. Same thing with Herbert, who, by the way, I'm going to continue to say it, and I know he's like the most popular quarterback in the league for whatever reason, and he is immensely talented. He's a top 5 or 6 quarterback in the league in terms of talent. And I know his stats were off the charts his first 3 years. Justin Herbert is overrated. I said it. He's overrated. Why does he get the pass? We talk about how the quarterback needs to elevate the team. And I understand Justin Herbert has all these factors. His coach sucks. Okay? His line's not good. If this guy is this immensely talented quarterback, this franchise-altering quarterback that everybody makes him out to be, how come he's never won a playoff game? How come his team's 4-7? Justin Herbert to me is an example of everybody that thinks that you're just going to bring in a magical quarterback that's going to fix everything. And I'm not saying you don't do it if you feel there's a magic quarterback, but there's more to it than just the quarterback. The Chargers have the same record the Giants do. Basically. But he's overrated. Now, I may change my opinion. I think he's got incredible talent. I think he may end up being one of the top 3 or 4 quarterbacks in the sport. I think he could easily be a Hall of Fame quarterback. He's really special. Like Drake May, to me, reminds me of Justin Herbert. But let's not put him on a pedestal before he earns it. The guy's won a playoff game. He choked away like a 28-point lead or whatever it was last year. And I know it's not just him. I know the defense gave up points, but the Chargers didn't score. Chargers didn't score in the whole second half of that playoff game. Let's see. The next quarterback of this team needs to have a presence. The position is to have a quarterback. Yeah. Blake Bortles won a playoff game. Let's push it. No. Blake Bortles wasn't great. How many playoff games did Dan Marino win? He went to a Super Bowl. And I think it is, second year? No, Rivers was not trash. Rivers went to the playoffs not every year, but a lot. And no, I don't think Herbert's trash. I think Herbert's really good. But I don't think he should be in the conversation of the same class of Josh Allen and Pat Mahomes. And, let him have a little bit of success before you put him in that conversation. Do I think he's capable? Yeah, absolutely. But I don't think he should be put in that class yet. Let's see. Herbert's teammates can't catch. That's a lot of quarterbacks. Pat Mahomes receivers can't catch. Which quarterback's team has the most drops in the league? Kansas City Chiefs. They're going to the playoffs. They won the Super Bowl last year. Let's see. Dable and Shane will not force a quarterback when and if they pick, and we should get excited. I mean, they shouldn't force a quarterback. That's what bad teams do. I'm not saying I wouldn't love Herbert. I would. When I say overrated, I'm not saying he's a bad quarterback at all. I think I would love him on the Giants. When I say overrated, I just don't think he should be put in the class of those guys. I'm not saying he can't enter that class, but I don't think he should be in the same class as guys like Pat Mahomes and Josh Allen and even Burrow. Not yet, anyway. Not yet. Let's see. Do you think Pat Mahomes is who he is if not selected by the Chiefs as sat for the year? I mean, I still think Pat Mahomes is really good no matter where he would have got drafted. Like, I think he's like super special. But what I'll say about Pat Mahomes, do I think he's quite what he is now? No, I don't. Like, you have to be fair. Like, he went into the perfect situation. He sat behind the smartest quarterback, arguably in the NFL, and Alex Smith, like really smart, for a year. He got to play for probably the smartest offensive mind in the history of the NFL, or at least since I've been watching the sport. You could argue Bill Walsh, and there's several other guys you could argue, but one of the smartest offensive minds in the history of the NFL with Andy Reid. He got to play with arguably the best wide receiver in the NFL for the first 4 or 5 years of his career with Tyreek Hill, and the best tight end in the NFL with Travis Kelce. So Pat Mahomes would still be really special no matter where he played. Like, he's silly in terms of how good he is. But he probably wouldn't be this good. Like, it was the perfect storm. You put Pat Mahomes in the best possible situation you can, and you saw what happens when you put a silly quarterback in terms of talent into a silly situation. Let's see. Daniel Jones sucks. He shouldn't play another day. Listen, I'm not gonna fight you guys anymore. I can't. There's nothing I could fight against. It's not worth fighting you guys. Danny says Mahomes just sees the field at an elite level. He would have been a star. I agree. He would have been a star no matter what. I just don't know if he'd be this level of star. But yes, he'd be a superstar no matter what. But at the end of the day, like you could say that about every quarterback, right? Would Joe Montana be Joe Montana if he didn't have Bill Walsh, who invented the West Coast offense, and he didn't have Jerry Rice, and he didn't have Ricky Waters, and he didn't have, Jonathan Taylor? Would he be Jerry Rice? Would he be Joe Montana? Would Tom Brady be Tom Brady if he didn't have Bill Belichick? Probably not, right? So you can say that about most quarterbacks. Abe says, thoughts on trading back into the first for a quarterback if possible. You mean the back end of the first? Yeah, that's actually an option that I didn't discuss. I said the three most likely outcomes are trade up or stay where we are and take a quarterback early, draft one day 3, or late day 2, or just sign a veteran, right? That would want to come here and could compete with Jones. I think those, but yeah, I think that's a possibility too. I'm not in love with that idea. My idea with the quarterback position is if you love a guy, you do everything in your power to get him. You don't wait and hope that he trickles back to 25 and draft the guy. But hey, it's been successful. You show up, be successful with Lamar Jackson. It's been successful. But that's my thought process. My thought process is if they love a quarterback, you do it as early as you can in this year's draft. But yeah, that's certainly a possibility. Because Giants have 2 second-round picks. Say they take a wide receiver. Say they take Marvin Harrison Jr. We get the 4th pick, and then we're a quarterback. Let's say it's J.J. McCarthy, or I don't think it'll be Jaden Daniels. I think he's going early, or whoever that they identify they like, and he falls further than he should. Yeah, that's at least a possibility. I'm not in love with that though. I would, if they're gonna do it, I would rather them do it with their first pick. Let's see. John says, I think we build the team, stick with Jones in 2024, and move on in 2025 if needed. I do that from time to time. Sorry about that. John, if you would have told me that 2 weeks ago, I would have said I don't think that's going to happen. Because I didn't think we'd be winning these games, and DeVito has a lot to do with that. Well, I wouldn't even say a lot. The defense has played great too. They deserve their credit, but yeah, I think that's a growing possibility at least. I'm going to say I don't think they completely neglect the position. I think they will do something, but I think it's a growing possibility we won't take a quarterback with our first pick. Again, I'm not saying we won't, but if you would have said 2 weeks ago, I would have said for sure we're taking a quarterback. Now, I could see it going either way because we're not picking at the top of the draft. So we'll see. And Abe says, then you don't think getting, then you don't getting Harrison in your scenario. Oh, I love Harrison. Here's the thing, Abe. As much as I love Marvin Harrison Jr., who I think is the best wide receiving prospect to come out in a very long time, certainly since I've been on YouTube. And that's high praise because there's been some incredible receivers. Jamar Chase, Jalen Waddle, Devontae Smith, CeeDee Lamb. There's been some great wide receivers. Just as a prospect, I think Marvin Harrison Jr. is the best wide receiver prospect since I've been on YouTube to come out. To best describe Marvin Harrison Jr., he is Devontae Smith with Terrell Owens' body. Not to say that he's as jacked as Terrell Owens, but he's built like that typical alpha wide receiver, but he could run routes like Devontae Smith. Like, to me, he's the best prospect I've seen at the wide receiver, and that includes Jamar Chase. And I know Jamar Chase was a great prospect. I would love Marvin Harrison Jr. on the Giants, but I'm going to go back to what I say. The quarterback position is so important that I'm not messing around with that. If I put myself in the mind of Joe Schoen, I'm not putting my job on the line for my 3rd or 4th or 5th favorite quarterback prospect in this draft. The position's too important. If I have the opportunity to take a guy I love, I'm doing it because ultimately my job is going to rest on that guy's arm. So that's where I would be. I'm making sure I get my guy. Now, I don't know if we'll feel that way about a quarterback. I don't know. But I love Marvin Harrison Jr. I think I'd be very happy if we get Marvin Harrison Jr. on draft night. I would not be upset. Payback says, I'm a huge Buckeye fan. I would love Marvin Harrison Jr., but our need for quarterback, I get it, man. I talked about Daves and Wink earlier, but obviously that's a hot topic of conversation, so I'll talk about it again. I think there's something to it. I do, but I don't think it's as big of a deal as Glazer made it out to be. But I wouldn't be stunned if he gets fired at the end of the year at all. I somewhat expect it. Kind of 50-50 on where it's going to go. But I do think there's something to it, but I think Glazer oversold it when he talked about that they're going to fire him in season and all that. No, I think he was looking for clicks. But yeah, I think there's probably something to that. The team stinks. There's going to be tension. Giant Realist says, how can people say trust Schoen but don't think he could fix the O-line without spending first-round picks on it? GMs make their money. I think it goes both ways, Giant Realist. I think it goes both ways, and I agree with you. If you're going to trust Joe Schoen, or at least give Joe Schoen a chance, you have to be open to both possibilities. I think it goes both ways. I don't think you could go into next offseason being like, well, we have to take a first-round quarterback no matter what, or Joe Schoen's an idiot. No, I think you have to realize that there's variables that go into it. You have to realize, well, maybe Joe Schoen doesn't want to put his career on the line for that quarterback. Maybe he's not in love with him. Maybe he feels this is a year to continue to build the rest of this awful roster because there's not that transcendent talent where we're picking at the quarterback position. So if they go that route, I think it goes both ways. And it's the same thing, like you said, for the people that say, oh, well, exactly. If you take a quarterback, he's an idiot because this offensive line is so bad. No, I think you have to trust Schoen to be able to build a roster. And a roster is not entirely built in the first round. So I think it goes both ways. I think you have to give him a chance, regardless of what he does, and understand that both ways potentially could make sense. That's my mindset on it. But if he loves a quarterback, I think he should take one. Yeah, because I think we're in the spot to do it. I just don't know if the quarterback he loves is going to be obtainable because we're not picking first anymore. We're not picking second. At best, we're going to be picking like fifth, maybe fourth. Shane will be fired if Jones thinks to join up again next year. I don't know. It's possible. I don't know. I honestly don't know. Why would Wink be fired if the defense is playing good? I'm not saying he should be fired. I don't want him to be fired, by the way. I'm slightly leaning he won't be fired. But if you're asking me why, if he does get fired, one, we don't know why they're arguing if they are arguing. Maybe there's something that Wink is doing with his defense that Dable doesn't like, or maybe they don't get along. But I think the reason would be somebody's got to take the blame. And that you see this often when teams have really bad years. If the head coach doesn't get axed, the coordinators do. I'm slightly leaning he won't get axed, but I wouldn't be stunned if he does. If your team wins 4 or 5 games, fair or not, like if we're being completely honest, and I know fans don't want to admit this because they hated the guy, okay? And I wanted him fired at the end. I didn't hate him, but I wanted him fired at the end because the main reason was because we had to hire a GM. But and I didn't want him to influence the GM that we could bring in. But if we're being completely honest, and I know you guys don't want to admit this because you hated him and he embarrassed himself on the way out in the 2 quarterback sneaks, Joe Judge didn't get a fair chance with this team, but it was the right thing to do. Not everything's always fair. Not everything's always fair. That's just the reality of the situation. Not everything's always fair. But I don't want Wink to get fired. I hope they bring Wink back. I think he's a good defensive coordinator. And I think we've drafted a lot of players that fit his scheme. I especially if Dable's going to end up calling the plays next year, if his attention is going to be that much more driven towards the offense, which I think is at least an increasing possibility, I want them to at least have some familiarity with the defensive coordinator. I want him to be able to come back and continue to coach these guys up. I agree. They had to get rid of him. I agree they had to get rid of him. They had no choice. But he didn't get a real opportunity. I mean, Jones got hurt and they were starting garbage at quarterback, and he didn't even get to choose his offensive coordinator. But I agree they had to get rid of him. Let's see. There are things I liked about Schoen and Dable too, but I'm not so quick to crown them. There are still areas on this team they have yet to address. And if they aren't significantly better next year, I'm giving them 4 years. It's what I've always said. I'm going to stick with that. I'm giving them 4 years. But hey, if they fire him after next year, they fire him after next year. I can't control that. I agree. DJ got paid $80 million to make big plays and win games, regardless of deficiency on the team. Having said that, DJ haters make me. And J-Man says, would you rather have one of the top 2 quarterbacks at the prices of our 2 seconds and next year's first or Jaden Daniels? Well, here's my answer to you, J-Man, because I don't know what Joe Schoen feels about these quarterbacks. But if Joe Schoen feels, I'll just say Caleb Williams, who I love. If Joe Schoen feels that Caleb Williams is significantly better than Jaden Daniels, I would take my picks. Take the 6th overall pick, take my 2 seconds, and take next year's first. If Joe Schoen feels that Caleb Williams could be Pat Mahomes or could be Josh Allen, someone in that realm, take my picks. Take my picks. I'm not settling at the quarterback position. If I have an opportunity, take my picks. Take my 6th pick, take my 2 seconds, take my first in 2024. Good luck. I'm going all in. I'm getting my guy. Now, if he feels there's not much of a difference, then I guess you wait and you take Jaden Daniels. But if he feels there's a significant difference, take my picks. Have them. Here you go. Take them. Let's see. What would you say our record would be right now if the team was healthy all season? I think 7-5. That's crazy to think about. I think we would have won the Jets game. I do. I think we would have won the Jets game. I think we would have won the Bills game, actually. We didn't have Andrew Thomas in that game. We didn't have Daniel Jones in that game, right? We would have won the Jets game. We would have won the Bills game. That's 2. So that's 6 wins right there, right? I think I'd have us at 6 because I don't think we were beating the 49ers no matter what. I don't think we were beating the Dolphins. I don't think we were beating the Seahawks. We got destroyed in that game. We weren't beating the Cowboys either time. So I think 6. I think we would have won the Bills in the Jets game. I think we'd have 6 wins right now. I think we'd be 6-6. Yeah, I think it'd be 6-6. What's up, Slurp? Hey, Chris, thoughts on the edge position? Aziz is basically a no-show and it's good. I think they got to replace Aziz, man. The guy can't stay on the field. I think they got to replace Aziz long term. I don't think he's a guy that you could trust. Now, I mean, obviously he's gonna be back next year. There's no reason not to bring him back. But Aziz, you know who Aziz is? I said it maybe a month ago. Aziz is what's his name? Lorenzo Carter. Aziz is that shiny edge rusher that you see all the ability in the world, you see all the potential, and you fall in love with him, and he never can stay on the field. And he can't do it consistently. He's Lorenzo Carter. That's what's going to happen. Aziz is going to play again next year. He'll show a couple of flashes. You'll be like, oh, if only he could stay healthy. If only he could stay on the field. You can't trust Aziz long term. Aziz is better than Lorenzo Carter, by the way. He's more talented. But that type of player, a guy that you can't invest your future in. And I think that, I think the edge is a big need for this team. As good as Kayvon looks this year, we need another one. So, I think the edge is a big need. Going into the year, if you ask me, Chris, what's our biggest needs? Obviously, quarterback. That goes without saying. We all know that. Whether it be this year, next year, the year after that. That's probably going to be a need. Hopefully not. Hopefully Daniel Jones stuns me and he becomes Josh Allen if we bring him back next year. But if you ask me now, how could I say it doesn't seem like a need? But outside of that, wide receiver 1, offensive line on the offensive side of the ball. I think the rest of our receiving core is starting to mold into at least a potentially solid unit, but we need that main guy, right? We need that Stephon Diggs for the Buffalo Bills. I still think we need that. We need improvement on the interior offensive line, edge, and a second cornerback. I think that's what we need desperately. And we may need another safety because McKinney may not be back. But edge, corner, we need another guy opposite Banks because Dory's not going to be back. And maybe Cordell Flott develops into that. Maybe Hawkins, whatever. But I still think we need another corner. Corner, edge, interior line, and a wide receiver one. Let's see. What is unlimited asking me? My God. Let's see. I would take a wide receiver one that could get consistently open but make plays around him, players around it. Yeah. Going to the Packers game next month? I am not. Defensive tackle's a need too, JC Silver. Good call because we lost Leo. That's probably a need too. As good as Dex is, yeah, I think we could use a little bit more meat in the middle. I think I would still prioritize edge before that. But yeah, that's definitely going to be a need. Hyatt as a 2, Slayton as a 3. I don't think Slayton's back. Let me ask the chat. If you were Joe Schoen, and I like Darius Slayton. Darius Slayton's been a good Giant. But if you were Joe Schoen and you could save $6.5 million if you cut Darius Slayton, or you pay him $7.5 million next year, what would you do? Now, if he's willing to do what he did 2 years ago and take a huge discount to come back, by all means. But why would he do that? Somebody's going to be willing to give him something. So I don't think Darius Slayton's back next year. I think Wandell and Hyatt are for sure, but I don't think Darius Slayton's back next year. And exactly, I think that's why we brought in Hyatt. I think Hyatt's the natural position for the natural replacement for Slayton. Let's see. Yeah, cut. Yeah. Hyatt and Wandell are extremely specific receivers. I think an all-around Adunze is awesome. Out of Washington, I don't know where he's being mocked. I haven't been looking at the mocks yet. I know you do a ton of mock Sports Influencer. Adunze is really good. Like everybody loves Penix. When I watch the Washington games, the guy that stands out to me the most is Adunze. He's really good. Stanley says, "Is Daniel Jones dating Kay?" It seems that way. Could easily take wide receiver top 10. Yeah. Also, the ground game is a concern. We are getting gashed in the ground game. Ground game has been a concern the last 2 years. I mean, it's been a disaster. I mean, Josh, we were never getting both those guys. I don't think. Again, I don't know where Adunze is being mocked, but I can't imagine Adunze is going to go in the second round. T says, I figured out what having a good culture means. It means winning. Guess what? It's also the same as identity. You're right. At the end of the day, when you're winning, yeah, you're right. Those are just other words of winning. You're right. Let's see. How many All-Pros, Pro Bowlers do we have? I mean, I think we have some potential. I wouldn't label Kayvon an All-Pro yet. He's definitely bordering on being a Pro Bowler. But Kayvon obviously could become an All-Pro. Dexter's already an All-Pro. Andrew Thomas is an All-Pro, or damn near close. That's 3. Outside of that, I mean, Barkley, I don't know how much longer he's going to be here. He's a Pro Bowler. I don't know if I'd label him All-Pro, but he's a Pro Bowler. Outside of that, I don't think we have another All-Pro. O'Kara came up maybe trending towards a borderline Pro Bowler. He's playing well this year. That's probably what I would list. But I think Thomas, Dex, Kayvon, and Barkley for now. Let's see. He's played really well. So he's at least a borderline Pro Bowler. I'm not gonna go as far to say Banks is a Pro Bowler now, but I think he could be a Pro Bowler in the future. I loved him. I loved that draft pick when we made it. I love him. Like I think he could be really good. Chase says, I'm calling it. We're winning out. Book it. Chase, put down the ganja, my man. Creative says, what's up, bro? Got here. Your thoughts on Barkley next year? Stay, go, or franchise tag again? I think Barkley is... I think they're going to get something done with Barkley. I do. I think they're going to get something done with Barkley. But I thought that last year and they didn't get something done. But I really do. I really think they're going to get something done with Barkley. But I think it'll be cost effective. I don't think it's going to be a huge contract. But I think Barkley will sign for something reasonable. I think they'll get something done. I think Barkley's going to retire a Giant. I do. I think he's going to play the next 3 or 4 years as a Giant and retire. I do. I think he'll finish it as a Giant. I'm not saying he's going to sign a 4-year deal. Maybe they'll work out something towards the end, but I think he's going to play his career as a Giant. I really do. Let's see. Is anyone talking about Knicks going in the first round? Looks pretty good to. I saw like 1 or 2 mocks pop up on Twitter the other day, and they had Knicks going to the Giants at 5. I don't want that. I don't want that. I don't want that. And I know Knicks is having a great year, and I know he's in the Heisman conversation. And listen, if they do it, I'm going to get behind him. I hope he turns out to be great. And I'm never a guy that, pretends to, be more knowledgeable than the guys that are in charge. Like Joe Shane's the general manager. He's got resources. That's his job. So I'm not going to, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. I'm like, okay, he must see something in the guy. But if you're asking me, do I want Bo Nix as a top 7 or 8 pick or wherever? No, I don't. Bo Nix, when you watch him play, okay, first off, I think 30, he has by far, of like the high-end quarterbacks in this draft, by far the most yards after catch. By far. Like I saw a stat, it was insane. Because everything's screen passes. Everything's getting the ball out fast with that Oregon offense. Bo Nix, to me, he's like a quarterback, I feel, who has perfected that offense. He's smart, but he's not a high-end first-round pick for me. To me, he's like, I'm not saying he can't be better than this guy. I'm sure he can be. But to me, he's like Mac Jones. There's nothing sexy about Bo Nix for me. Nothing. I don't see any elite traits when I watch him play. When I watch Drake May, my jaw drops. When I watch Caleb Williams, my jaw drops. Even when I watch McCarthy, I see jaw-dropping potential. Nothing I see from him makes my jaw drop. I don't like him. Not as a first-round pick. I don't like him. Let's see. And again, if they take him, Shane, you're smarter than me. You bet. I just hope you're right. I think he's better than Stetson Bennett, but I don't think he's. I think Bo Nix legitimately is a fringe first-round pick. I think he's better than Stetson Bennett, but I don't think he's not a franchise-altering quarterback. And if we're moving on from Daniel Jones, you might as well just keep Daniel Jones. Like, if you're going to draft Bo Nix, you're already financially committed to Daniel Jones. Just keep Daniel Jones. That's my outlook on my opinion in terms of Bo Nix as a quarterback prospect. Let's see. What if we take a Sam Hartman type? I mean, listen, I've watched a few of his games. I am a loose Notre Dame fan. I guess he's a guy with some potential. I remember they were talking about him when he played at Wake Forest last year. I don't know. Maybe he's like a late day 2, early day 3 guy. Maybe. Like, I think that's another option, as a long-term backup and maybe a guy with potential, right? Similar to what the Cowboys did when they gave up a 4th-round pick for Trey Lance. They see a guy with upside. It's possible. I I want nothing to do with Justin Fields either. Why would I trade for Justin Fields? Why would I trade for Justin Fields? I laughed. People talked about that during the offseason too. Why would I trade for Justin Fields? Justin Fields is entering his 4th year. How many wins does he have to his name? 6? If you trade for Justin Fields, you're going to have to commit a huge contract to the guy. Why would I trade for Justin Fields? I want nothing to do with Justin Fields. Let's see. Thomas, thank you very much, man. I saw a mock draft today, and they have the Giants drafting Daniels LSU at 6. I think you're going to see more of that. Maybe not just the Giants specifically, but I think you're going to see more and more mocks where Daniels is going to go in the top 10. Just based off of his raw potential. I think he's going to have that Anthony Richardson-like ascension from last year's draft class. I'd be surprised if he doesn't go in the top 10. I think there will be a team, whether it's the Giants or whether it's somebody else, that convinces themselves his tools. Like I read a report, people are expecting him to break the record that Richardson set last year in the combine for a 40 time for a quarterback. They're going to say, look at his speed, look at his arm. There's holes in his game, but we could grow him into something special. I think he will go in the top 10. Let's see. What's up, Alpha Man? Thanks for popping in. He's not really on a rookie contract, though, because if you trade for him, you got 1 more year on the rookie contract. Like, you're committing yourself to a healthy extension. You're not giving up draft capital for Justin Fields not to extend him. It would be like when we traded for Leonard Williams. You were committing to giving him a big contract. So that's what you'd be doing if you traded for Justin Fields. And I've never liked Justin Fields. I've never thought he was very good. I know he makes highlight plays. I've never thought he was very good. Joseph says, Caleb Williams refused to meet with the press in his last loss at USC. Here's what I'll say about that, Joseph. I think the first bit of negative, and you know I want Caleb Williams if we get him. I think the first bit of negative publicity towards Caleb Williams was ridiculous. When people knocked him for like the fingernails and the crying at his mom after a game, that was stupid, in my opinion. I respect you if you don't think it was. So maybe I shouldn't use the term stupid. I don't think that means nothing to me. I could see being at least slightly concerned and being a little bit of a red flag, the fact that he refused to talk to the media after that game. I think there's at least some credibility to that, especially in the New York market. I think that's fair to be like slightly concerned. I think that's fair. It's still not going to scare me from drafting him if I'm Joe Schoen, but I think that's fair. The first thing was dumb, in my opinion. The first thing was dumb. It's a breath of fresh air. It's a breath of fresh air knowing we don't have to stress for a top pick and we can just enjoy the rest of the season. Yeah, I mean, listen, I just my outlook is I'm not going to get stressed out over that. Listen, John, stupid was the wrong word. I don't mean to insult anybody if you feel differently than me. To me, that doesn't alter my opinion about him at all as a prospect. He was emotional after a game. It happens. Kayvon Thibodeau cried after a game when the Giants won last year. It happens. He was emotional. He's upset. I get the fact that it was his mother. I get it. But hey, at the end of the day, the guy's emotional. It happens. That's part of being an athlete. That's part of sports, right? You leave it all out on the field. I think that was overblown. The thing with the media, I think there's a little bit more to that, where I think that you could say, okay, that's at least slightly concerning. But hey, going back to my point about what you were saying, Slurpee, is, my mindset on the whole tanking situation is this. I don't control it. I know the team, the players, and the coaches are going to go out there and they're going to try to win. I can't control it. In the back of my head, do I know it's probably in the team's best interest to get the first pick? Yeah. But am I going to get bent out of shape if the players on the team that I root for go out there and they try their hardest and they win a football game? No. I can't control it. At the end of the day, what happens, happens. And we'll figure it out at the end of the year. So for everybody that's flipping out and going crazy because we won a football game, I mean, that's up to you. If you want to be miserable for the rest of your life, go right ahead. That's my mindset. It's like you can't control it. I'm going to be happy for the players and the coach when they win. And the hypocrisy that comes from it is this. 2 weeks ago, the same people that are crying, and I'm not saying all the same people, but a lot of the people that are crying that the New York Giants won a football game because it hurt the draft pick were killing Dable because he was losing football games and said that he needed to be run out of town. So if you can't win. So if Brian Dable continues to lose, you're going to say we need to fire the coach, but you're going to be happy about the draft pick. Like, come on. So that's just how I feel about it. It's whatever happens, happens. And let's see. And King says Giants will be 6-8 Christmas Day at the Eagles. It's possible. It's possible. I think we stand a decent chance against Green Bay. I think we stand a decent chance against Green Bay. I don't think we'll beat New Orleans. I know New Orleans isn't playing very well this year, but New Orleans is a tough place to play. I think we stand a decent chance against Green Bay off the bye. I wouldn't be stunned if we beat them. I don't think we'll beat New Orleans. I didn't say you were. There were plenty of people who were. There were people that were saying that Brian Dable stinks. Brian Dable, the team's quitting on Brian Dable. I'm not saying everybody. That's why I said not everybody, but there were a lot of people that were saying that. Are you going to pretend people weren't saying that, Knicks Nation? Do you want me to go back and pull up all the tweets? Plenty of people were saying that. Joe Shane Train says, who are we drafting as a quarterback as of right now? Your gut pick. If we're taking a quarterback, you're not going to like my answer probably. I'll save it for the offseason. I don't think you'll like my answer. If I had to say, based off where we're picking, if I had to pick a quarterback that I think we would take if we weren't trading up and staying where we were, you're not going to like my answer. But it's what I feel. But I will save it for the offseason. Let's see. No, it's not Drake May. Drake May's going in. Drake May's going in the top two. You might be right, Josh. You might be right. You might be right. You might be right, John. You might be right. King, I don't think he's a scrub. And again, King, I'm actually slightly leaning towards your side now, where we may not take a first-round quarterback because we're starting to win football games. But yeah, I like J.J. McCarthy. I do. Let's see. Malik Neighbors is the second best receiver in the draft. A lot of people like Malik Neighbors. You think that I was thinking about this the other day, John, with the cheating thing. Why? I'm going to be calling Nick games this week, Bricks, because we're on the bye. I just don't know which one. I got to look at the schedule. Here's my thoughts on the cheating thing, John. I often think of the hypocrisy when it comes to sports. Like, for instance, why in baseball were the Houston Astros, and I'm not saying they shouldn't have been, they cheated, but why were they crucified? Why did fans say that they should never be allowed to play again? Why did fans say that Carlos Beltran should never be allowed into the Hall of Fame and everybody that was associated with it? But Tom Brady and Bill Belichick are the gods of the sport. They got caught cheating too. And then the other thing I think about is why did John Harbaugh or Jim Harbaugh get suspended for 3 games in college football for stealing signs, where in baseball, if you do that, that's a skill. Oh, you're able to pick up on that they're going to try to throw a curveball? That's great. That's a skill. It's just hypocritical. I don't understand why Harbaugh was suspended at all, because he stole signs. Do a better job hiding your signs. In baseball, teams steal signs all the time. That's part of the sport. I don't know. It just seems hypocritical to me. Let's see. Um, the Eagles barely getting by. I wouldn't be surprised if they lose in the playoffs. I wouldn't be surprised either. They just feel like a team that just finds ways to win, though. But I wouldn't be surprised. They're not your typical 10-1 dominant team. True, but I also heard he steals from the homeless. Who are you talking about? Harbaugh? And Giants Chronicles, Josh Dobbs right now. Rest in peace. Dobbs is good, man. I like Dobbs. I don't think he'll be a Giant next year, but I like Dobbs. I like Josh Dobbs. He's a good story. Read the rest. What do you mean, John? Read the rest of what? Oh, of the super chat. R.I.P. Pastronaut. Rip Pastronaut. What am I not picking up on? Is this a joke? I don't know. I'm sure I look silly. I don't know. Josh Dobbs right now. Rip Pastronaut. Pastronaut is nickname. Oh, the NASA thing. That's right. With his yeah, I heard about that. I didn't know that was his nickname, but I heard about the NASA thing. Yeah. I'm not watching the game, so he ain't playing good today, I guess. Oh, you said I hope he steals from the homeless so he falls to the Giants. Oh, okay. They had people on the sidelines with sunglasses recording stuff. It's a major difference. I mean, he's stealing signs at the end of the day. I get it. I get it. I just think it was a little bit overblown, personally. Again, Joe, to be fair, I didn't know all the specifics. I didn't read into it. All I heard was that they stole signs. So I'm like, okay. Like, I don't think the guy should be suspended for 3 games. But again, maybe there's more to it. Maybe they were, like you said, if they were doing what Belichick did, where they were filming them and stuff, that's a different story. Let's see. Who should be a vet quarterback Shane should bring in? Let me look at some of the. I'm going to cut this short in about it. I didn't mean to go live this long, but I was having fun talking to you guys. Let me look at NFL free agency next year for the quarterback position. At least like possibilities, right? If they're going to bring in a free agent. All right, let's see. I mean, now, by the way, when I go over this, don't expect sexy names. They're free agents for a reason, right? You've got Cousins, not in our ballpark. Somebody's gonna give him a good amount of money. Not realistic. You've got Tannehill. That one could make sense because I don't think he's valued that high at this point. He's 35, but he's still a decent starter. Jacoby Brissett, similar. Taylor, you could bring him back. Mariota, maybe. You got Darnold, Winston, Mayfield, Minshew. There's options. Dobbs. There's options. But I would be surprised if they're not drafting a first-round quarterback. I wouldn't be surprised if they bring one of those guys in. I wouldn't be surprised if they bring one of those guys in. Appreciate that, D-Man. Thanks for being here, buddy. And Maeve, stand up. New member, man. Welcome to the squad, man. I'm not feeling none of those quarterbacks. Is Huntley a free agent? I don't even know. Wouldn't be opposed to him. I haven't watched a whole lot of him. I couldn't believe he made the Pro Bowl a couple of years ago. But oh yeah, he is a free agent. He's 26. Yeah, he'd be okay. I think there's several names you could look at. Tannehill could make sense. He's obviously not great anymore, but he's a guy that he could start a game and he's not going to embarrass you. I think I wouldn't be opposed to Darnold, and I don't love Darnold, but at least he's like a guy with some upside that's still relatively young. Wouldn't be opposed to it. Winston, same thing. There's options. None of those guys are going to win you Super Bowls, obviously. Mayfield. Somebody brought up Mayfield earlier. I think the caliber of Mayfield is that caliber of quarterback I'm completely for in terms of a guy that could start and win you games. I don't think Mayfield's a good fit for the New York market. I just don't. And I know he's kind of humbled himself in recent years. I think there's better options than bringing in Baker Mayfield. If we're going to spend money, it better be on the O-line. Well, I'm with you. I mean, O-line, pass rusher. Yeah, I'm with you. Yeah, I mean, I think the only way it would sign here, Lay, is if it was an open competition, which it probably wouldn't be if we're being honest. He would get an opportunity if Jones struggled, or well, the thing is this, Lay, if Jones isn't ready to go, if he's hurt and he's not ready to go the first 2 or 3 weeks, Tannehill may jump at that. Why not? So it's possible. Definitely possible. Any O-line prospects you know of in this? I mean, I know of the guys that people, the dude from Michigan, not from Notre Dame. Everybody's talking about the tackle. There's like 2 guys that are at the top. I haven't looked much into them, but there's like I love the guard out of Michigan. He got hurt. He was a 3rd round prospect. I think he tore his ACL, but yeah, I liked him. He was a guy that I was gonna have as a potential target for the Giants in the 2nd or 3rd round, but he got hurt. But there's 2 tackles at the top of this draft that a lot of people are talking about. Spaz Out says, I like Jaden McDaniel. Seems like a lot of people like him. I'm going to have to look more into him as the offseason gets underway. I'm probably going to end up doing like an hour and a half video where I talk about all the quarterbacks and just give my opinion on all of them. Not every quarterback, but like the guys that are potential 1st round picks. And I will look into them a lot more, but I'm probably going to do a very long video on that. Let's see. Penn State and Notre Dame can't miss that. Yeah. Dude, Iowa was also a very good program for linemen, and Michigan as well. What's going on, Lake? Nona Man, thanks for popping in. How would you feel about signing a wide receiver and drafting Brian Thomas? I haven't looked at the wide receivers available. Last year's free agent wide receiver class was very thin. Very thin. So I like the approach to Giants. Let me look. I'll look real quick. Who's the wide receivers available next year? I know, what's his name? People have been talking. T. Higgins right now is available, right? Or he could be. Maybe Cincinnati will sign him. Mike Evans, he's older. I don't want him. That's got Kenny Golladay written all over it. As good as he's been, one of the most consistent wide receivers in the sport. He's going to be 31 next year. I don't want him. I don't want Odell. Everybody loves Odell. I get it. I don't want him. He's 31 years old. I don't want him. Curtis Samuel, no. To me, he's kind of like a little bit bigger version of Wandell in terms of that multifaceted wide receiver. So no. Tyler Boyd, Cedric Wilson, Kendrick Bourne, DJ Chark, Paris Campbell. Bye-bye. I was excited about him. What a dumbass I am. Nelson Aguilar, Randall Cobb, Calvin Ridley's a free agent. I thought he saw maybe they had an option. I thought Michael Pittman. That's an interesting one. I don't know how he's doing this year, but that's an interesting one. I like him. T. Higgins, like I said. I like Pittman. What's his market value? Let me look at his projected market value. $23 million a year. My God. Claypool, I don't want. I mean, if money's not a factor, my favorite guy that I just mentioned is probably Pittman. Out of the wide receivers I just mentioned. Or Higgins. Higgins is probably my one, but again, they got to fit the scheme too. Let's see. But I would prefer to draft a wide receiver. Did you think from what Shane said that we are not going to draft a quarterback? I don't want to read too much into it, Thunder, to be honest with you. Like at the end of it, I said, we might not be taking a first-round quarterback. But I think it's just me trying to analyze what he's saying way too much, because Joe Shane's not going to tell you the truth, or at least he's going to beat around the truth. Like, He's pretty straightforward, but he's straightforward to a point. Like he's not gonna give away all his secrets for the draft, right? Before so I would read into it with a grain of salt. Now, as the draft gets closer, if he shows more definity in terms of like, no, Jones is the starting quarterback, we still believe in him long term, say in February or March, then I might start to say, yeah, we're probably not drafting a quarterback early in the draft. Right now, I think it's too early to tell. I think a lot of it's going to depend on where we're picking. Why are we acting like Tommy DeVito can't turn into something? Think of all the late round picks and undrafted quarterbacks to turn out good. If he gets us to 7 or 10 or better, that is insane. I'm not going to completely write Tommy DeVito off. I'm not going to predict it. I won't write him off. Here's what I'll say. If you would have asked me 2 weeks ago, do you think Tommy DeVito is even going to be a backup in the NFL? I probably would have said no. The odds are stacked against him. I think he cemented himself as a guy that could be a backup in the NFL, which is good. That's a huge step up for him. But to say that I trust him to be a starter, there's a long way to go. But I won't say it's impossible. Tony Romo was undrafted. It's not impossible. It's just not very likely. It's just not very likely. Joe Schoen is an 8+ philosophy. Let's see. Derek says we could beat and play with the Commanders, Pats, Jets. It's the Cowboys, Niners, Eagles that we can't. We got a long way to go before we compete with them. That starts with the line and the quarterback. But yeah, we're nowhere near. I convinced myself before the year started that we were at least approaching the Cowboys level. We're nowhere near that, and I will not convince myself of that again until I see definitive proof that this offensive line is getting better. I put way too much stock into the growth of Evan Neal going into the year. So I don't care who the quarterback is. I see Nick. And I agree we need a better quarterback too, but I don't care who the quarterback is. If our line doesn't get significantly better, we're not beating the Dallas Cowboys. Not consistently. Both need to get much better. But guys, I'm going to close this out. It's 9:28. Been live for a while. Appreciate all you guys. Thank you guys for all the support. I will try to do some stuff during the bye week. I don't want to do the draft content yet because it's like so premature, man. It's like I don't know. I don't know the facts. I don't know where we're picking and everything else. So I think it's just silly to do a mock draft right now because as we get a better idea where we're going to be picking, that's when I'll probably start to really dive into the draft content. But guys, have a great rest of your night. Appreciate all you guys. Yeah, let's go Giants. Let's find a way to get another win. I don't know. Or not. A Knicks fan is talking about getting overly excited. Seriously, a Knicks fan. What do you mean, Joe? I mean, obviously I did get overexcited. The team stinks. But guys, have a good night, guys. Be good. Let's go Giants.